right, we're going live, buddy.
All right, buddy.
No, watch your language and don't get naked or anything.
Yeah, I'm cleaning up.
Oh me, let's see who
You
all's on
show
board.
them photos.
Good morning.
Howdy, folk. Man,
Now they're gonna wonder what photos we were talking about.
I don't have one of those "Hello, Francisco" microphones.
Good morning, Francisco. Good morning, Carol. Good morning, Tina.
Good morning, everybody.
Tina says they'll be a little bit late to chat. We're on the road again, so we will be listening, but not saying much. I think she meant. Well, I hope you're traveling safe and going. I don't know, going somewhere interesting, perhaps. And Chuck also. I'm assuming he's there also. Anybody else I missed? Francisco, it's good to see you here this morning. Usually you're in early and probably already gone to work or something, but so good to see you. I found some old pictures of what we were talking about in case we were still talking when we popped on. We were trying to remember when and where we were at the time. I found some of Mark as a young man.
Like a young, ugly man.
No gray hair, not a gray hair on his body.
Just black hair in those days.
Just dark black hair. Mustache. You only had a mustache back then, too.
So I'm thinking it was either immediately prior to or right after I I matriculated from the David Crockett High School. Somewhere right in there. Got on camouflage bridges.
That was normal.
Probably weighed like 100 pounds less than I do now.
Yeah, probably. But solid as a rock, that much I know.
In those days.
I'm sitting here thinking I could show it again, but now I can't remember where I put it. I canceled.
They were funny photos.
Well, they weren't. I mean, they were funny photos.
I don't know what Philip was taking a photo of, though. It looked like we were cold.
But that lizard wouldn't have been out if it was cold, unless
we had on too long of clothes to have that lizard out.
And that was a Tennessee fence lizard kind of lizard. It wasn't a western lizard, so I found here, let me show you a couple. I had found some. What I was doing was going through a bunch of pictures trying to find some of next week's guests. Oh, you know what? Here's one I didn't get scanned. I wanted to show you this one.
Oh no.
This isn't you or me. What?
Hold on, I need to blow my screen up here. Go ahead.
Oh, let me blow mine up. Actually, that way. No, that didn't work.
No, that didn't work. That did not work. That didn't work. There we go.
Here, look at this one. Now
where was that at?
This is in my backyard, and this is Philip. I built that frame.
Oh, you were scraping a hide.
That's Philip scraping a hide of a deer he shot that year. There it is. Okay.
Look at them socks.
Well,
Well,
that's the time when I wore a lot of socks like that.
that's beautiful, dude. That's a beautiful photograph.
I was in the background as a kid.
Got the kiddie pool in the background, and back
Yeah,
yonder's the creek.
yeah, back there, way back there, all past that field is Stewart's Creek. You can't see it
Is
now.
is
Anyway,
the, is the place where you rode that little 14-foot canoe over?
oh man, I rolled it through me twice. Ruined a pair of good binoculars. In fact, it might have ruined 2 pair of good binoculars.
That was the perfect. Yes, I can still see you stepping into that. I remember him.
Yep.
I think we ate him.
Brenda said, "Why has he got wood in his mouth?" And I said, "Cause we were probably poking sticks at him to test his."
That might have been the turtle.
It might have been, and I think I've got another picture of him.
I have a photo of us skinning that turtle.
Do you?
Yeah, if I can find it, I will send it to you.
Wouldn't that have been a wonderful thing back then? Had things like GoPros and cell phones and stuff been in it.
We'd had so much fun.
We some of those adventures would make great viewing today. I
What?
really
Just reach out there and grab him by the snoot.
And you said
He's got tushies.
Here's that picture I was showing a minute ago. That's Mark, believe it or not, right here on
Look at that.
right here. That man child there is Mark.
He looks like he just get a big old chaw in and black curly hair and camouflage and Vietnam gear on and
exactly whatever on his back, and I know that's Philip taking that picture because I can just tell by his posture and that vest. Well, let me put it this way: if it's me, and I'm 99% sure it's not me. I don't know who would have been taking the picture.
It was Philip.
Because I was the one usually doing the
Didn't he wore that like puffy orange vest?
Yeah, see, that's what I remember too. And then here, this is the turtle or that turtle I was showing a minute ago. There he is on the ground.
I'm almost 100% sure that we ate that turtle.
I'm pretty sure we did too. And that's that's not a good representation of that turtle, because if you laid your foot down by that turtle, you would see that it's way bigger than your foot.
And his neck would have come out about 8 inches, and he would have reached over there and took your toe off.
Yes, it would. Anyway, I found those and I scanned them in. I
wonder if that was at Philip with us at Catoosa.
He might have been. He might have been at least once. I don't know. I think should have been. I don't know if that's Catoosa though.
No, it didn't look. It looked like.
Good morning, Debbie Burnfield. Welcome in.
It looked like up at Land Between the Lakes, but I don't remember being up there at that time of the year.
It could have been. I'm not sure. Well, only time I
don't remember being up there when the leaves were off like that. So
no, the only two times I remember for sure I was up there was during turkey season, and one time we went fishing.
When I told you to back up.
Those are 2 separate trips. I think Brenda was with us on that back-up trip, she just wasn't with us in the canoe. She was up in the camper.
Yeah.
I had that little, I had that little trailer that popped out into a camper. That was neat. I swear that was the neatest little rig. I really like that. They make little motorcycle campers just like that today that you tow behind the motorcycle. And
I've seen them.
You start popping them open, they're like origami, or they just keep getting bigger and bigger like an artist. And that's kind of and they're made a lot like that one was, the design idea anyway.
I see a lot of these little like teardrop looking campers now that they pull behind small cars.
Yeah. I love teardrop.
And I'm like, golly, I'd like to have one of them. Because you could go anywhere. And
oh yeah.
If you didn't have a pile of people with you.
We've been talking about getting one towed behind our rig, and that may be eventually how we travel at this point. I'd like to have one up. I always thought it'd be good if you had a setup where you could maybe have a hammock or two that you could sleep in if it wasn't hot, or if you wanted to sleep out, but you didn't want to sleep in the camper. But, they started making those things and selling those things in the 30s. And the first one I ever saw.
Really?
Yeah, and the first one I ever saw might have been as far back as high school for me. And it was in a Popular Mechanics magazine. That's where the plan they had the plans in a Popular, back in the day that you
where you could build it yourself if you wanted to.
Hey John, welcome in. Yeah, you could build them yourself, and they were made back then. They were using mostly plywood to make the body and everything. Well, which you still could today if you made one, but. Anyway, that's the first time I ever saw one, so I've always been kind of interested in them. And then they, nobody, you didn't see them or hear about them for a long time, and now they've come back a little bit because you can tow them behind smaller cars. And
I see people pull them with like a Subaru Outback or something like that. And they seem to be perfectly capable of pulling that little teardrop trailer.
Yeah, they absolutely they were good for that. And I'd like to, I don't know if my wife's in here hearing this. We've talked about it before.
Which is one of the finer cars that human beings have ever made, by the way.
The Subaru Outback.
Yeah.
Well, you've had a couple of them, haven't you?
I've had 3 of them, and there are days where I have used the little Scooby-Doo to basically plow the driveway, so I could get a 3/4 ton pickup truck out.
Yeah. Well, that little Subaru wagon, and I don't know what they were called back then because they didn't call them Foresters or Outbacks or anything. They were just like a number.
Yeah.
That I had back in the day that thing would go anywhere. I drove that to work some days when the roads were absolutely iced over. And in fact, I took Phil into work a couple of times because we drove that instead of anything else. It was older car at that point, kind of had been run hard and put up a little wet at times, I think. And it was, if I went off in the ditch in it wasn't a huge loss, but that thing went, and I never had a problem with it. And I sold that to my neighbor. You remember my landlord and on Belt.
He's the guy that made me drive a station wagon over to somewhere in Nashville.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't have a driver's license or nothing. I was not even old enough.
Did he know that?
Oh yeah. Oh, he was fully aware. He's like, can you drive this vehicle? I was staying with you guys, like one summer, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Hey, Mark, can you drive this vehicle over here?" And I'm like, "Well, maybe I can." He's like, "Well, then do it."
Do it. I liked him a lot. He was such
And
a
I
neat,
never had driven in town once in my life.
much less something like that. Did you? He was last time I saw him. I'm sure he's long gone. May he rest in peace.
Oh, he's got to be resting in peace.
He had a place down in Lake Norman or Normandy. I don't know what they call it now. I can't remember. Anyway, that's one of the. It's in kind of the odd lake in sort of middle Tennessee. That still it's a TVA reservoir, not a the other guys, Corps engineers. But anyway, he had a boat, he had a small cabin type cruiser in his backyard, and he was working on it and putting in a cover. He was making a cover for it. He was going to float that thing down, put it on that lake, and go through the Tom Bigby River system and go to, and take it all the way to New Orleans. That was, and I tell you, I thought about going with him, but we were gone. But
Of course he was.
he probably did it too. I don't know, but he probably did it. He had horses, you know. He had that big white one-eyed horse in the back. I rode around
Yep.
the field and stuff
Yep.
on him. I can't remember his name. He was a gelding. It seemed like he had a mare in there too, and I rode her a little bit. But he was a neat guy. So he took he bought that Subaru from me at some point, and
Oh, he did.
yeah, he said I just think that might make me the best farm car that in the world. And I thought, well, yeah. He said that's got 4-wheel drive. He said I could use that for anything. So he bought it from me. He was real excited. He asked me 2 or 3 times if I wanted to sell it, and I finally did. And we were looking for something bigger by that point.
Oh,
One-eyed horse. He did. Was his name Chuck? No, it wasn't Chuck. I can't remember what his name was. It was when I first saw it, I thought, well, that's different.
So that's weird because we had a big old red pack horse that we called Chuck.
Oh, really?
But he had both eyes, so.
Well, there is my lovely bride. She says my youngest one called and wanted to chat. One of her chickens was by a fox last night, so she was sad. Oh, a fox right there in town. So well, sort of town, outskirts of town. I'm surprised she didn't call me. I guess she didn't want to call me and be sad, but I'm surprised she didn't call me and say, "How are we gonna kill this thing, Dad?" Because that'd be more along the lines of what she might be thinking. Wonder how it got. Did it must have got into her? Did it get
But
into her?
your daughter's like my daughter. She wouldn't want the fox to come to any harm either.
Well, probably. Yeah, that's true. She probably wouldn't. Hi, Dave. Welcome.
And she knows that her dad would like deal with it.
Yeah, that's true. Apparently, there are 2.
We still have.
Foxes? You mean 2 foxes?
We still have at least 4 coons in the yard out here.
Have you seen that big one again?
Coons. They're still every day. I let the dogs out every day, and the coons leave the yard. But they're still here hanging.
She said. She's saying apparently Kelly forgot to do a head count last night and she was in a hurry, so one of them got left outside.
Oh, that'll be fox. That's fox bait.
Yeah, that's fox bait for sure. And I hope it wasn't like one of her favorites or something. Of course, they all kind of are.
Well, that's what you've been probably seeing photos of my daughter with them sitting up on her shoulder and like.
I have.
I'm like, and they all have names, and I'm just and I'm her dad, and I'm like, it's a chicken.
it makes them so much harder to eat when they got a name.
It's just a chicken, and it's going to live about 6 years, and then we're going to make soup out of it.
Yeah. Zelda soup. Oh, I hate that for her, though. See, these chickens aren't very old, and they really just started laying. These are like 6 years.
It was the one named Zelda.
Yeah. See, that's what I was saying. Just like Caitlin.
Oh we have 30 adult laying hens, and we have 10 more young, as my wife would say, teenagers right now.
Yeah.
2 of whom turned out to be roosters, which is, I think, kind of cool, actually, until they attack me, and then it'll be not so cool.
And then there'll be dead roosters.
They'll be dead roosters, but right now they're kind of cool. They stand up in front of each other and like crow at each other.
Yeah,
and neither one of them can really crow yet, but
Tina said maybe it would be better if you said we'll make fried chicken, Mark. Fried chicken tastes better than soup. Well, that problem is, Tina, by the time they die, though, if they're that old, because you don't.
They don't make a good fried chicken.
They don't make a good fried chicken. They're tough, and if they've got a name, they tend to be ones that you keep longer. And by the time they're done, they're old and tough. So soup works better, but now Kelly's is young and tender. After that would probably be a good eating hen, but I bet she don't eat it. Most likely, knowing my daughter,
there's not a snowball's chance in Hades that your daughter butchered that chicken and it's going to make something out of it. She might make some cool
art piece
thing out of it.
That's what I was getting ready to say. Knowing my daughter, she won't eat it, but she will make something out of it. It'll be an inanimate object of some sort using bones and feathers. I guarantee you. I promise you there'll be a Zelda
my
monument or memorial or something. Did I tell you she went to a show last weekend? They did I can't remember. Brenda, tell us the name of the show. It's because it's interesting.
I think I saw photos of that.
She had some stuff posted. She took 60 items that she had created over the last few months to that show, and she only brought 16 home.
That's cool.
And she got requests for
more.
Some custom pieces. You're gonna love this.
Can you take my dog and make it something cool out of it?
Exactly. Maybe not something.
No.
I mean, you knew that was coming.
I knew exactly what was coming.
I asked her if she takes that. She's got that one. The first thing she ever made was that piece. I don't know what
that deal. She made a deal.
Yeah, for Oscar or of Oscar, and that's kind of what kicked a lot of this off. And people saw it, and they said, "Oh, that." Some people saw it and said, "Oh, that's really cool." Some people saw it and said, "That's a little weird," but she likes it. But other people do too.
Some gal asked her if she would make a Chihuahua deal.
I'm sure that she would.
And I'm not being judgmental about anybody's need to have their critter memorialized and however they want.
Yeah.
So,
Brenda, I'm afraid to ask, is the Chihuahua still with us? I think the Chihuahua was still alive, Tina. I don't think it's passed yet, but I think there was some concern. If it's the one she told me about, I think the lady was concerned that it was getting of an age that it was a concern, and they were seriously thinking about some sort of memorial to that fella. I don't know if it was a male or female, but
Trigger was mounted.
sure was. He's still, in fact, he's, as far as I
Coman-
know, he's still in a museum up there somewhere in Ohio.
Comanche was mounted. The sole survivor of the Little Bighorn, he was mounted.
Yeah, in fact, he's in the
He's still at Fort Hays,
Oh,
Kansas.
Fort Hays. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the sole survivor of the actual part of the Custer massacre was a horse, and that horse was found after the battle, and they brought him home, and I guess kept it up somewhere for years until it passed.
He lived at Fort Hays, Kansas, till he passed, and then they skinned him and made a deal out of him.
Taxidermied him. Hi, Dave. The other Dave. Look there, we got 2 Daves right there together. Dave's Disney Dreams, and Adventure.
We got all kind of Daves in today.
Right there together. We got Deuce Daves in. We had 3. If 3 Daves would be like a mega power kind of thing. Trip Daves. Okay, let me get some stuff opened up here and get going. Next, I'm going to say this, and then I'm going to say it again, I'm sure, before the show's over. But next week, I highly.
It's gonna be Western.
It's gonna be epic. That's all I can say. Well, I think it's gonna be epic. You guys may not, but I bet you do, or I bet you at least enjoy it, because I'm gonna have 2 of my former TVA workmates with me. I'm gonna have one that was a running partner sometimes out in the field. Well, both of them were actually, but one of them was I consider my mentor there, and taught me a lot about that kind of work and things. And the other one was more of a equal cohort kind of coworker. But he and I spent a lot of time on the water together, where we would sit, and we did a lot of talking about book writing and book reading and other things of wonder and interest to lots of people. And he's the gentleman that introduced me to the term hider. And so the hider stories, the original hider stories, are going to be told next week by the original gentleman that told them to me. And I think that'll be quite fun.
And I've been told that I need to know both of them. And I've never met either one of them, but we're going to have a good time.
Yeah. And Steve, the older of the 2, he's if I can get him going, he was a musician he is a musician, although I'm not sure he's playing much right now. He's having some arthritic issues. I mean, he's 74 or 5, I think, now, and he retired a few years before I did. But he's he's a hell of a storyteller. I mean, he can. I wish I could have gotten him involved, or could get him involved in like storytelling at Jonesboro or something. He can tell some of the best. he can just make. He used to entertain folks for hours upon end when we'd be on trips or going to a meeting somewhere, and we were spending the night, and everybody's sitting around doing things, eating or whatever later. And he can just tell. He knows things. He's smart. He's real smart. You and Dave would have been good talking statistics together, because they had me in there, and I always felt like a dummy when it came to statistics. Statistics to me, I did algebra 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know. In college, I did. What's the other one you do?
Geometry.
No. The where you do all the equations and everything. That version of math.
Oh, calculus.
Calculus. I did all that and passed it with flying colors, and I struggled in statistics. There was some concept there that I just could not grasp. I think it's because I kept telling myself, this crap's all made up. It ain't real. Which I never should have said to myself because that just made it harder. But so because of that, Steve and Cottrell and Dave, they sort of started what they called the statistics club. And the statistics club usually met out on the back porch when we were in the trailers, or out by the pond when we were in that aquatic lab building, and they would help me with my statistical analysis and research. they, and they both could talk it much better than I could. But Steve told me, I hope we can get him to this point and don't run out of time. He did research for his master's degree. Now he's from Tennessee, and he went to Tennessee Tech for his undergraduate work.
Yeah.
Because he lived in Oak Ridge, and Tennessee Tech was not that far away. And he said back then they considered that they called it a suitcase college. You basically went back and forth on weekends, and he came home and worked and did other things. But anyway, he went off to Michigan State to do his master's degree, and his master's degree was about wood ducks. And at the time, this was in the early 70s, and wood ducks were a hot topic because the numbers had been declining. And
Yeah, we had the bulk of them, actually.
Well, yeah, we did. And the Holston River, where he did his research, turned out to be like the biggest breeding / nesting area in the whole country at that time. But nobody realized that. And anyway, we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But he's got some real stories about the first time he ever put radio collar transmitters on a duck. And as far as he knows or knew at that time, he might have been the first one to ever try that. He may not have been, but he didn't know anybody else that had ever done it. And unfortunately, some of his
subjects,
that's a better word. Victim wasn't a good word. Some of his subjects didn't survive the effort because they had a hard time with them. Plus, radio transmitters at that time were not as small as
they
they
were
are
probably
today.
about this long, and they put.
But he did some of that. He told me just the other day again. He reminded me about a story. He went down over a bluff with a rope to get to a wood duck box, and he had set up there they were on above the creek or above the river. And he got there, and when he got to it, he ended up in a yellow jacket's nest or a hornet's nest, one, and they like to eat him alive before he got to the ground. And he just finally let go and threw back and left it to the wind and the river to save him or die whenever. But he had to get away from those bees. He said he just dropped and he landed in the river, but he said, when I let go, I wasn't sure where I was going to hit. I just had to get out of there.
I just didn't care anymore.
He just didn't care anymore. He said those things hit him right in the chest. That's where and he said, I couldn't let go. He said, there they were, boring a hole through him.
Your wife's telling you not to
I know. Don't worry. Believe me, I could tell it, and next week he could tell it, and it'd be a whole nother story, and much, much better. I promise you. That's just one.
Good morning, Miss Kay.
One of the things I'm not going to tell anything about this one, so I won't give anything away, babe. But one of the things I'm hoping to get him to talk about is about the search for the Wampus cat. The search for the Wampus cat. That's just, I don't want to tell it because I'd probably get it wrong, and he may change. I mean, it may change when he tells it, but it's just hilarious. It's a wildlife kind of story.
So I think I was telling you yesterday that I had made my grandson a whole bunch of arrowheads, and
you mentioned that,
and I gave him 2 spear points, and he he immediately got home. My oldest grandson, he immediately got home and lost his spear point, like cutting down bushes or something. He lost it. And his mother called me and said he's distraught. Put him on the phone. He's 5. Put him on the phone, and he was like, "Grandpa, I need a new spear point." So I built him another one.
You made him one.
I said, "Grandpa could build you spear points all day long, buddy."
I bet he don't lose that one. Well, I mean, he might 5.
Yeah, he will.
Okay. I guess he's not to the point. See, if I'd been,
which is okay.
well, I get that. Yes, a Wampus cat, Tina. If maybe you don't have Wampus cats up in New York, but we certainly have them down here. I promise you.
Wampus,
I may never have seen
Wampus
one.
cats, catty Wampus.
Oh my goodness, it'll be funny, guys. I'm telling you. I bring all your friends. I've already had. Apparently, Dave has been advertising that he's going to do this show with me, and so he's already got people wanting the address and the
New subscribers.
Possibly. I hope so, but I just hope they show up to talk because they'll be in the chat. They won't be on the show, but
I can't wait. I've heard about these 2 guys for years now, and I can't wait. So
I've told stories to you about them since I met them. They had that kind. I met Steve first too. He hired me. In fact, he's the guy that hired me at TVA. He came to the university and was looking for a wildlife technician,
a hand
in one summer, and he ended up keeping me. And eventually, I went on full time. And there are guys that are true believers in Bigfoot, also weird guys. Now, wait a minute. You might be talking about Maple Bacon there. Oh, there he is. Speaking of.
And there's Mike. Speaking of Bigfoot, there's Mike right there.
Well, trust me, there's true believers in Wampus cats too. I tell you.
There's true believers in Black Panthers. There's true believers in
Swamp
And
ape.
I'm not talking about like the Forrest Gump. I'm sorry to break up your Black Panther party, guys.
That's different.
Just a whole different deal.
Okay, let me start my show.
There are albino whitetails living with Black Panthers with Wampus cats in the mountains of Tennessee right now.
Promise you. Up in a cave. There's a big cave.
There's a big cave that keeps all of them.
Where they all hang out and survive and live together in harmony, apparently. Elk and mule deers and wolves, timber wolves.
Uh-oh.
What?
Oh.
So, today, this got 2 things happen. Something else we were talking about a week or 2 ago made me think of the WASPs. But what really happened was last week, some of you know, the Experimental Aircraft Association had their annual, what they now call the Air Venture, fly-in up in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It's a huge air show event. It started out for people who wanted to build their own airplanes at home, and then it has grown into this huge event, so much so that the little airport there where it's located in Oshkosh, or I don't know, outside of town or whatever they call that area, but has become, on those 10 days or so of the event, that's the busiest airport in the world. And it's a nonstop, all day long flying fest of fun and adventure. They have air shows, and you can see everything from huge military aircraft to the latest military jet, and airplanes that you can build at home and airplanes that, all the manufacturers, what few there are these days, show up. And Miss Sarah, that you guys met a couple years ago, was there. She's now working as an influencer for the Cirrus Aircraft Company. So they took her up there from Knoxville, and she was there all week in their facility up there. I don't know what all she was doing, taking pictures, hanging out with people, I'm sure being interviewed by the people that came and went. But it was, I ain't got to talk to her yet about all that. I'd like to get her to come back on and tell us about that. I may have to do that one weekend soon. See if she'll come back on and tell me all about what it's like now that she's been flying for a couple of years and just seems to travel all over the country. Anyway, they do some special events during the week. They give all kinds of seminars, but there's one theater, and I don't know if that's a real theater or a big tent they put up, but they do it's called the Theater in the Woods, and they always have special in the evenings. They have special guests, and they can be astronauts. I've seen several of the Apollo astronauts there. Could be what's left of World War II fighter pilots, or transport pilots, or parachute people that went into Normandy. I mean, they do some of the neatest shows there. And last week they did a show about they had two things going on. One, first part of it, first half of the discussion. Show's not a good word. Seminar, I don't know, just discussion session, talk session. The first half was about two of the remaining Jimmy Doolittle raid pilots, or that flew. I don't know if they were pilots. They were crew members, pilots and or otherwise, that were still alive that came to the event, along with three different people. Two were brother and sister, I believe, whose parents' father had flown in the Jimmy Doolittle raid, and so was another one. So that was the first half, talking about their experiences and how they survived that and all the things that happened later, and meeting Mr. Doolittle. I don't know, was he a colonel? I don't know if he ever made it. He might have been a general by the time he retired, because Jimmy Doolittle lived through it and got back to the United States eventually. Anyway, they landed in China. If anybody knows a little bit of that history, but so there was a big talk about that. But the second half was about the topic today, and I learned some things during that discussion that I did not know and was surprised to learn. So I started reading up on this, and that's partly why I picked this today. So yeah, thank you, Carol. And her, I don't know if you've got her. Yeah, that's Instagram. She should have lots of stuff on Instagram right now. She put out a bunch of stuff while she was up there. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the WASPs, the Women Airforce Service Pilots organization. For now, that's what we'll call it. So that's the main topic, and how it became what it is. But as usual, I'll do my house cleaning here. Hit the like button, guys. Subscribe to the channel if you happen to be new and haven't already, and leave a comment. Tell me to go to Hades. Whatever you want to do, just make sure you tell it in 8 words. I gotta come up with another. We need to shoot.
Keep adding a word every time. Well, last time it was 7 words.
Well, it's 7. I said 8 this time because it's at least 7, so 8's a good number. Because that's at least 7.
Or 23.
Or
23.
That's fine too. But at least 7. That's right. It is at least 7. Okay, August 2nd, is the 214th day of this year, according to the Gregorian calendar, and there are 151 days remaining in 2025. But it's just flying by, I tell you. And I mean that. It is kind of flying by. That's something that my dad and mom always told me.
It's only 5 months till Christmas.
Well, I know. Mom and Dad used to say, "Some when you get older, time just goes by faster." They were right. So, August 2nd, what kind of things might have happened on August 2nd? I thought the biggest thing, and I never thought about this, I guess. We celebrate July 4th. 1776 is the day we declared our independence, and that's true. But they didn't actually sign that document until today. August the 2nd, 1776 is the day they signed it.
That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought they signed it the day they declared it, but apparently that's not the case. On this day in 1790, the United States began or started their first U.S. census. And I think the Constitution was ratified in 1787. So I guess that's, since they were going to do 10-year cycle, so that was the first year they would have started that. 1873, the Clay
Then we
Street.
went 83 years before anything else happened.
Wait a minute, say that again. What did I
I
say?
said we went from 1790 to 1873. We went 83.
Oh, well, I'm sure lots of other stuff happened. They just didn't pique my interest at the moment. 1873, the Clay Street Hill Railroad began operating in San Francisco, which is now what is the famous Ding Ding trolley car system in San Francisco, which is still there. My wife has ridden upon those.
I think mine has too.
She already sees a typo. I do too, Brenda. Is it SIGED? I just saw it when I looked back up. There it was, right in my face. 1918. Mike, I put this in there just for you and Diana. And in 1918, the first general strike, and that's a typo there too, in Canadian history took place in Vancouver. I'm not sure what they were striking about, but there you go. In 1922, a typhoon hit. I don't know if you say that Shantou, China, I don't know. I'm not good with Chinese enunciations. And that typhoon killed more than 50,000 people. I put that in there because that number just.
Holy buckets.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they know about, so there may have been even more. 1923, President Calvin Coolidge became the U.S. president upon the death of President Warren G. Harding. Did he die? He wasn't assassinated, so he died of something. I can't remember what. World War II, on this date in World War II, the motor torpedo boat PT-109 was rammed by the Japanese destroyer Amagiri and sinks Lieutenant John F. Kennedy, future U.S. president, who managed to save all but two of his crew members. One of the movies I remember seeing as a young lad,
PT-109.
PT-109, and who played that part? I know the guy's name. I see his face, but I can't think of his name. Played the part of Kennedy, and I always remembered, and this is at least somewhat true. I've read a book about it too. He got what he had. They didn't get all their flotation, of course, off. So they get anything that would float's how they managed to get to the islands, or an island. Well, they actually moved around to several small islands, but they had to walk in that or swim. They waded more or less with floats, and I remember reading how their feet got just destroyed by the coral and all that. But he made trips back and forth to get his men that were that were still floating around in the wreckage of that PT boat to get them to shore. Cliff Robertson, thank you, Chuck. I knew I could see his face, but I couldn't think of his name. But in Surf Boat,
I think he even brought his deceased comrades to shore.
That's possible. Yeah, they may have. So it was a pretty big deal, and but that movie always just made a big impression on me, just because of what, not about being president, but what he did in that situation. Um, and that was one of the things that they did. They ran PT boats a lot. Apparently, they even made movies about that. There's a movie called In Harm's Way that John Wayne's son gets rammed and this is missing in action, I think. Just materializing to say howdy. Oh, hey, Don. Well, you can say howdy. You're always welcome to. Hang on a minute, guys. I'm going to have to clear my head just a moment. I'm going to turn it off a minute. I'll be right back.
He must have disappeared entirely. There he is. There he is.
I just need to blow my nose and use some spray because I'm sitting here not breathing.
Put you into a coffin fit.
Yeah.
Not a coffin fit, but a caffeine
fit. Caffeine fit. I'm glad you clarified that.
Sorry, we drop our G's.
Yeah, we drop our G's a lot. Oh, who else did I see? Somebody else come in. Okay, welcome in, Kay. I think I saw Kay. Yeah, 9 has always been a good number. I'm not sure where that came from. I missed something. Anyway, so all those things happened today, and I just hit that button again. Dang it! Stop that. All right, now. Well,
He meant dang it.
I meant dang it. Okay. Now this one kind of
This is weird. This is a weird one.
this is a leap kind of, but the reason is I'll explain just in a moment. On this day in 1876, James Butler Hickok died, better known as Wild Bill Hickok. He was born in 1837. He was a folk hero of the American Old West, known for his life on the frontier. As a soldier, a scout, a lawman, a cattle rustler, a gunslinger, a gambler, a showman, and an actor, and for his involvement in many famous gunfights, such as was he at the OK Corral? No, maybe he wasn't. Maybe he wasn't there. But anyway, and there's been songs written about how he died, and I heard for a long time that some young man walked in and shot him in the back. And he claimed he killed his father or done something to his father. Anyway, I don't know which way it happened, but in 1876, he was shot and killed while playing poker. He was playing poker in a saloon in Deadwood, South Dakota. This just says Dakota Territory, but that's in South Dakota, I believe.
It is.
Yeah, it does. I put that in there, didn't I? Present day South Dakota by Jack McCall. An unsuccessful gambler. The hand of cards that Hickok supposedly held at the time of his death has become known as the dead man's hand. 2 pairs, black aces and black eights. And the reason I put that in there, if you've ever been to one of I think it's my profile site on Facebook, I have that picture in there. Because I took that picture laying there with the Derringer and dead man's hand because I had that Derringer, and I thought, hey, this would be I think this is a neat idea. So anyway, so that's why I did that, and that's why I did the story. And I also realized while reading it that Wild Bill Hickok, despite all of his fame and glory and all the stories that were told about him, true or false, only lived to be about 39 or so. He was born in 37. He died. Oh, he didn't even make 40. Yeah, he was, or maybe he was 41. No, he was 39. I have to get my math right. I thought he was older than that when he died, but I guess if you live that kind of life, you might as well not expect to live too long. So that's where the dead man's hand came from, and that's where I got the idea when I made that photo and used that on a different thumbnail several years ago. But it's still out there. If you go to my Facebook profile, I'm pretty sure that's what shows up at the top of the page. And that little pistol there, that little Derringer,
I might know the guy that built that.
the guy that built that is related to Mark Zorn, in fact.
Or I might have built that one.
Well, it's possible. It is possible. That's a 22 model version of that. There were muzzle loading models of that made too, that had a nipple in the back instead of the firing pin, and you could load it up and you'd have a little muzzle loading Derringer. Anyway, so yeah, you might have made that.
I just watched a program about gunfighters the other day. Oh, Steve Ranella did it about the gunfighters.
Oh, really?
And this guy actually was a gunfighter. A lot of the guys they talk about that were gunfighters weren't, but this guy was.
Tina, I mean, is it Tina's? Or Kay talking about people not sitting their back to the door? You can ask my wife. I've ever since we've known each other, I've always tried to sit either in a corner or against the wall so my back was never exposed. I've never been in a gunfight or anything, but I've done that since she's known me, I think. She's always been amazed when I didn't do that. She said, well, don't you want to sit in the corner? Anyway, so there you go. Brenda's talking about squirrels. Well, you know there has to be at least a couple of squirrels all day long. So what we're going to talk about today are the WASP. And what was the WASP? And I say that because it's kind of a plural term, but without an S. They don't usually put an S on it. And that stands for the Women's Air Force Service Pilots. Now, I always thought it was the Women's Auxiliary Service Pilots or some other word besides the Air Force, because technically the Air Force didn't exist back then, but the Army Air Corps existed, so I guess they thought Air Force was a good word even then. And it was basically, and this is the part I did not know until I watched that program during the EAA fly-in, was that it was a civilian outfit, a civilian organization whose members were actually civil service employees, not military personnel. And that's a long story into itself, but I'll try to get to it. Members of WASP became trained pilots who tested aircraft, ferried aircraft, and trained other pilots all during World War II. Their purpose was to free male pilots for combat roles during World War II, because they were having to train flyers to get into the war zone, as opposed to, them having to spend time moving airplanes around or ferrying airplanes overseas, or training people to fly airplanes, which I've got a really interesting story later about a trainer that will ring home to this. And despite the fact that they were created more or less by the military or within the military kind of didn't want to take credit. They wanted to take credit for them. They didn't want to take, it's almost like they didn't want to take responsibility for them. There was such a stigma about women flying these airplanes, even during this time when they were so needed, that I think they tried to keep them out of the, we're not going to, you're not really military. We're just kind of out here doing this because you're being handy, but you're not, we don't. So it was something they fought till their existence ended, and fought until 2016, actually, to finally get credit for what they deserved. I put this this was their logo. This was called Fifinella or Fifinella, and that was created by the Walt Disney Company. So that's why I put it in here to show
Huh.
everybody. But they actually, Walt Disney actually created a lot of logos and cartoons, and some of the nose art that was put on, aircraft back then during the war was created by the Disney studios because they made a deal with the government to help do their part for the war effort. They made a lot of training films. Ronald Reagan was, he was in the military during World War II, but he didn't go overseas. He was an actor, and he actually made training films with Ronald Reagan in them, and Walt Disney did a bunch of those. And that badge at the bottom is a basic picture of the wings they were issued, and you'll notice it doesn't have any, U.S. Army Air Corps or anything like that on it. I did find one other version of this set of wings that had a sword through it, so I'm not sure what that represented. And this one is supposed to be the official, so I went with this one instead of the sword one, even though I thought the sword one was way cooler. So these two ladies right here are largely responsible for the WASP being created. Um, One was Nancy Harkness Love, and I need to put my notes up here. Bear with me a second. Nancy Harkness Love, and she actually started originally an outfit called the WAFS. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. And the more famous female pilot that I knew from my aircraft um, interest over the years was Jacqueline or Jackie Cochran. And she was really famous and in movies and did stunt flying. I mean, she was just and test flying. These women test flew airplanes. They were the first ones to fly a lot of airplanes. They were not just these two, but this group. They were pretty amazing for people that didn't get a lot of credit. So the the Air Force Service Pilots, or WASP, excuse me, and they were also called for a little while the Women's Army Service Pilots. Again, that fits because the Air Force was part of the Army, and the Women's Auxiliary Service Pilots, which is what I'd always heard them called, considered a civilian women's pilot organization whose members were United States federal civil service workers. They became trained pilots who tested. I've already said most of that. But the WASP group was actually preceded, by, I have to always remember to click in the right spot here to do this, was preceded by the Women's Flying Training Detachment, WFTD, and by the Women's Auxiliary Ferrying Squadron, WAFS. Two separate groups. They weren't working together. They knew each other. They both kind of approached the military at the same time. Harkness Love was working with some people who have kind of got her the ear of someone who was in the part of the group within the Army Air Corps who was in charge of moving aircraft around from like the factories to the air bases. So she kind of got that one started first. And Jackie Cochran actually went through, she wasn't getting any response from the military. She was trying to get something like this going because she realized that spare pilots were going to be, and there weren't going to be any spare pilots. So all pilots were going to be in high demand. So she was trying to get a group started even before the other one got created. But she ended up going through Eleanor Roosevelt to get her to say, hey, how about telling these guys to talk to me about this? Which they finally did. And she was started the training group. And that was in like the summer of 41s when they started doing that stuff. And they made their proposals to the military, and military kind of rejected them. And then, Harkness Love got involved. She actually got to step in with her ferrying group. Um, and went on to, and then it went from there. So we're going to talk about those two separately for a moment. The WAFS, Women's Auxiliary Firing Squadron. Her husband, Robert Love, was part of the Army Air Corps Reserve. This is how she got an in to get hers kind of started first. And he worked for Colonel William H. I think it's pronounced Tunner, Tunner. And he mentioned Robert Love mentioned to Colonel Tunner that his wife was a pilot. In fact, she had a lot. By the time World War II was breaking out in Europe, she was one of the higher time pilots, female pilots in the United States, which most people don't realize. Some of these women had flown a lot more than the men that were involved. And he became interested in this because that was part of his job, moving airplanes around. So they met and they kind of formulated a plan, and Tunner went before the proper boards within the military and suggested that they try this women's pilots thing and put it in part of what was then called the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, which was all the office working women, the women who did it, nurses, the women that did anything but combat roles within the U.S. Army, because they weren't going to have that, no way. And so he helped. So they decided to do this, and let's see here. They drafted a plan and turned that into General Harold L. George, who sent it to Henry H. Arnold, which is also known as Hap Arnold. He was the U.S. general who basically ran all the Air Force stuff in Europe. It's sort of like Ike was over all the other military, but Arnold was the guy that ran the Air Force, basically. Arnold worked for Ike too, but Arnold was in charge of all that. And Eleanor Roosevelt worked, she was involved in the background. She wrote an article in the newspaper about it. People started getting behind it, so they finally said, let's give it a go. And they technically started working publicly on September 10th, 1942. Now, that's almost a year after we got involved in the war. So it just shows you that even though this was something they needed, they were moving slow to get it done. There was so much resistance about women flying, and there really was great concern about women flying fighter aircraft and big military transports and bombers, because they thought it would make the men feel bad or make them look bad, because here were these women, which you guys know didn't get that much respect and things like this then at all, that they were able to get, they didn't want women going out there and showing the men up, basically. So that was a kind of a big deal. In fact, it was such a big deal that it came into play with the B-29 program even more. they did create some uniforms, the WAFS, and that was a little different than anything else. And they were made out of gray gabardine. This was kind of a big deal because later they argued about uniforms with brass buttons and square shoulders, and it could be worn with gorge skirts or slacks, and everything was made from gabardine, which I did not know until my wife told me last night was a polyester fabric that had been created prior to the war, again because of shortages on other raw materials. I didn't know that it was a polyester. I always thought that I didn't know polyester existed before World War II. And all the WAF pilots, female, were given, flight uniform and khaki coveralls, parachute goggles, a flying scarf, and a leather jacket with their patch on it, that they were supporting the ATC, which was the Air Force Transportation Group or company or whatever. The headquarters were in Newcastle Army Base, which is in, I think, New Jersey, Wilmington. Maybe if John's in here, he can say that, but I can't see his answer. and she ensured that there would be quarters for the women to live on the base. She wanted them, they were really trying to get them to be part of the military. They wanted the women to get everything that the men were getting for doing the same kind of service. And there was just so much resistance for that. I mean, I guess I struggle with that even now. I believe out realizing just how much, what a big deal that was. And let's see, they started out working under a 90-day contract, and they earned $250 a month, and they had to provide and pay for all their own room and board. They had to buy their own uniforms. I believe that they also had, it says they were supplied with the overalls and parachute and goggles, but I'm pretty sure they had to pay for that themselves. I know they had to buy everything else. The originals, there were, let's see here, I've got a number here somewhere. They started out doing things like ferrying Piper Cubs, which were used as trainers even then. And there were originally 28 of them who were certified to fly to start this program. And let's see what else. And they all had an average, before they ever showed up, all these women had an average of over 1,400 flying hours each and a commercial pilot's license. There were a lot of, most of the men that started flying in the military during World War II didn't have anywhere near that much flying time. Some of them are just starting. I mean, it's kind of wild that these women all had this much time, and they'd all had jobs doing things like flying the mail or flying freight around the country, and really were doing all this sort of under, pardon the expression, under the radar. And I did it again, didn't I? Let's see here. I thought I had one more thing I wanted to mention about that. Let's see, Chris. And eventually they passed some requirements where they had to be 21 to 35, have a high school diploma, again, a commercial flying license, a 200 horsepower engine rating, which is something they don't do today, and at least 500 hours of flight time experience in flying across the country. They had to be, in other words, what they really were looking for were women who were already doing this kind of work, probably flying the mail, flying freight, maybe even flying passengers, even though that was rare to see a female pilot that got to fly people around. Let's see. I'm all right. I'm backed up on myself here. Okay, moving on to the next slide. And these are pictures. The top picture and the lower picture, top left picture and the lower the picture in the middle. Those are both of Harkness or Love after she got married. And the ones up, she's in that picture at the top. Although honestly, I can't tell what. Maybe she's the first one there. And those other four are for the first graduates, and what they're getting checked out in there is a T6 Texan, which you see a lot doing air shows and stuff today. And it was also famous. There were a lot of those left after the war, so they got bought up and reused as air show aircraft mostly, and still are today. And they look so close to the Japanese Zero, that in all the movies, such as the movie Tora Tora Tora, when you see the Japanese Zeros bombing Pearl Harbor, what you're seeing are TC6s in Japanese costumes, so to speak. Nancy Love and Betty Gillies, who was her co-pilot, were the very first women to ever fly a Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress. And again, this was a big deal because there were people within the U.S. military who did not want these women to be seen flying these big, heavy bombers, which at that time, this was a big airplane, across the ocean and deliver them to soldiers over there, pilots. That was such a big deal that, I mean, they really fought that. And then these two gals showed them it could be done. And eventually it became more commonplace, but they fought that like crazy. And they were going to fly this particular, in fact, this particular airplane in this photograph, if you look down there on its nose, it says Queen Bee. It's a pun for the B-17. I don't know if the Queen in this case had to do with the women pilots that were going to ferry it, or if they just named it that, because it's a big, B-17, and we tend to name machines and ships and boats and airplanes and motorcycles and stuff after women. I lost that train of thought. Oh, they canceled this trip originally because they didn't. Again, they didn't want to be. They didn't want these women to be seen flying them around. Eventually, she, at least, Harkness Love, got certified in 19 military aircraft, and she was the first woman to be certified to fly all the latest military aircraft, such as the DC C-54 Skymaster, which was a civilian version of DC-4, 4-engine multi-airplane transport cargo airplane. It was a big airplane. The North American B-25 Mitchell, which was what the Doolittle raid flew off the aircraft carrier to bomb Tokyo at the beginning, or when we first got engaged in World War II. And then along with her, they flew the B-7 Gillies. They flew the B-17, and she was one of the first women, if not the first woman, to ever be checked out in what at that time was America's hottest fighter aircraft, the P-51 Mustang. And this is just a color photo. There's so few color photos that you ever see of this time period that when I found this one, I thought, well, I need to put that in there just because. But this is a group of WASPs that are planning a cross-country trip in this airplane. I can't remember what this is, but I think it's a Beechcraft of some kind. And they were flying a group of them to another airport for multi-engine trainers kind of thing. Okay, then we move up to the training detachment. And this one was the one that Jackie Cochran got started. And she had gotten involved in the Brits had an organization already started where English women were flying jobs that male pilots had been taken away from so they could fly fighters. And she actually went over there and got started. She joined that group, and then she contacted Hap Arnold again, General Arnold, trying to get a similar organization to the British ones founded in the United States. And he finally approved that. He actually approved Love's first, and then, probably from pressure from Eleanor Roosevelt or who knows who, but he agreed to create the training detachment. And let's see, they originally started out in Texas and Houston, but then they moved into another airport where it was bigger. They had a lot more room to do all the training work they were going to be doing. And they had basically the same requirements to join as the other group did. And all that happened. It kind of happens simultaneously, but separately. And that's a picture of Jackie Cochran at the top left in a P-40 Warhawk, another early American fighter. It was the hottest thing we had when World War II started and became quickly obsolete. The Japanese Zero was already outflying it. The Messerschmitt 109 could outfly it. So, and the lower left-hand picture is Hap Arnold actually handing out diplomas to some of the first women who graduated through all the training to actually get started officially. And it shows them wearing sort of a uniform, but that's not a military uniform. And it's something they came up with. And I think, again, they had to pay for them themselves. The airplane on the right is a PT-19 trainer. At one time, I thought I was going to help restore one of those for a friend of mine, and it never did happen. The spar was rotten. This was almost all wooden. And it had a really unique upside-down engine in it, at least unique for us at that time. And let's see what else I've got here on her. Talks about Fifanella again. One of Howard Hughes's aviation Enterprises, which was on Hughes Field, well, at Howard Hughes Field, became their base of operations. And I think that was on, I can't think of the name of the airport. It was military. It was mainly military, and that's where they did all their training. Let's see. They were talking about being guinea pigs. That's not a good term usually. They were issued basically leftover khaki coveralls that the men weren't using, so they were probably used, and maybe they were just whatever sizes they could get. And 9 times out of 10, they were way too big for the women, and they referred to them as zoot suits. And if there was a style in the 30s or 20s where men had these big loose suits, and they were called zoot suits. I remember seeing pictures of that. And they just basically had to be housed wherever they could be. And the first death that occurred within the organization was with an instructor, and they were practicing spins, and somehow got into a spin that she couldn't get out of, and they crashed, and both of those died. That was the first death within this group. And the reason they talk about that here is because, again, not military, so there was no money to cover for funeral costs. All that had to be paid out of somebody's pocket. And in this case, Cochran paid for it out of her pocket. And one of the other pilots that I didn't mention a minute ago, who's one of the other first pilots that she hired or got on board, escorted the bodies back home, or her, at least the one that was going to be a pilot. And then the next person who died, and this is considered a first kind of thing, was March 21st, 1943, Cornelia Fort, a former flight instructor, had been the first to encounter Japanese aircraft at Pearl Harbor, and I'll tell you about that in a minute, was ferrying a BT-13, which was a Vultee trainer, with a group of male pilots, and one of the pilots, while showing off, flew too close to Fort's plane, and his landing gear collided with the wing of her plane, and it broke part of the wing off, and the airplane went down, and killed her. So she was actually died flying with a bunch of men showing off. Not that men ever do that. So she tried, and after this, Cochran tried really hard to get these women recognized as a part of the military, either put them as part of the WAC service, W.A.S.P, and make them a group within that group. It'd sort of be like a division within an army group, or a regiment within a division, which way that works. And they fought for that to the very end when everything stopped. Because they were not considered a real part of the Army, and the other women pilot organizations were not guaranteed all the rights of veterans. So they got no rights as veterans, even though they were flying military airplanes, sometimes into dangerous situations. And they didn't get any of the rights for that, so they got nothing. If a woman was killed on duty, her family would pay for her body to be shipped home, and they couldn't hang a gold star in their window to show the sacrifice they made. That was a big deal during World War II. If you had a son, or usually a son, killed in World War II, you were awarded the gold star to hang in your window to show that that's the case. These women were not given that opportunity. They were not allowed. In fact, they were not allowed to do it. Nor could they have an American flag draped over their coffin at their funeral. They weren't allowed to do that either, even though they probably died in a U.S. military aircraft. So out of those two groups became the WASP organization. They kind of joined. They finally put them all together, and they started all doing the same thing. And so these pictures are just some of that. That's like the first class that signed in for training. The lower picture is some hands-on aircraft training going on. To me, that looks like a small twin. So it's probably one of the Cessnas or the Beechcraft that they're training in there. Same thing here with that top airplane on the upper right is that Vultee trainer I was talking about a minute ago, or maybe that's a T6 Texan. Actually, they look very similar. And the lady beside that is Elizabeth Garner, and this picture is her flying or taxiing or getting ready to fly a B-26 Marauder, which I put in there because I had again, something that interested me. I used to work with a guy who was a crew chief on B-26 Marauders. Excuse me. B-26 Marauder was a twin engine high speed medium weight bomber, and it was high speed because it had a newer style wing that was much sleeker, smaller, less wing loading as they call it, so it didn't create as much lift at lower speeds as some of the others did, but it also made it much more maneuverable and just faster in general. And they were actually flying those right up until Vietnam. In fact, the guy I'm talking about worked on them in Vietnam, and they flew them as ground support aircraft in Vietnam, and were going to be in the Bay of Pigs, but that didn't happen. Uh, they actually had, and then let's see if I can say this right. They were some of the first pilots to fly jet-propelled airplanes. When men were less willing to fly certain difficult airplanes, such as the YP-59 and B-29 Super Fortress. The YP-59, I think, was the experimental version of the B-29. Hap Arnold recruited 2 WASP pilots to fly them, kind of to show the men, hey, look, these women can do it. In this case, he was using it against the men. He was showing them that women can do this. You should be able to do it. Women were trained. This is an example of one of 2 Chinese American women who were trained in part of this program. And I don't know if I have her name here. I'll talk about this lady in particular in a moment. But they were, they're showing link trainers, which link trainer was a new thing. I don't know if I talked about that last week or not, but I meant to. The guy that invented the link trainer had something to do with another topic I was doing. And they were taught how to do minor work on the engines. They had to be able to fix stuff, and if they went down in Labrador, they had to be able to, repair the airplane before they could fly it on to England sometimes. That particular link trainer picture, that Hazel Ying Lee was, she played some other important roles in this group and training and moving airplanes. And I'll tell you more about her in a moment too. There were 2 Chinese American pilots, women, within WASP, and there was at least 1 Native American woman who also flew, but as was the case all over America at that time, discrimination played a role, so they never allowed any black women to be part of this group. However, there were some black women who said, well, screw that, and they went to Tuskegee and they learned how to fly with the airmen down there, the Tuskegee, the famous Tuskegee airmen, who flew fighter aircraft and other aircraft in World War II, and became quite famous as the yellowtail or red tails in supporting or protecting bombers in World War II. Again, this is more work. That's a PT 26 or 20. Let's see it. That's not the one with the straight engine. Anyway, it's one of the trainers, and there they are doing, aircraft engine repair work. And the picture on the left shows Florine Watson. Whoa. Flying a P-51D 5NA. So, and she's flying that on a ferry mission, but that was a newer version of the P-51 that had come out to replace the original Mustangs. This one was hotter, faster. That bubble canopy made just a huge difference on these things. It meant it was a newer model. Let's see. Let me back up one. I missed something. Women flew 80% of all the ferrying missions that were done during World War II, and that was a lot of airplanes, and a lot of those were overseas. Between September 42 and December 44, the WASP delivered 12,652 aircraft of different types. To set examples as needed, Nancy Love made sure she was qualified to fly as many different airplanes as possible. Um, and when they weren't flying, they were studying navigation and communication skills and flying skills. And overall, there were 38 members of WASP that lost their lives in accidents while they were flying for this organization. 11 of them were during training, and 27 of them were actually on missions. So they were moving airplanes, say, between here and Great Britain or across the United States or some other island country or some, they hop these things around in, or at least war zone adjacent. They may not have been combat pilots, but they were always, a lot of them were really close to the action. I told you already that if they fell in action, the family had to pay for it. They had to get the coffin. They had to do everything. They weren't even allowed to do the flag over the coffin or display the star in the window. It was, I don't know, to me, it seems like a really raw deal. Here they are learning how to pack their own parachutes and, use a parachute, and they were trained how to do that too. They had to know how to jump out of an airplane if it wasn't working successfully. And these are just some training pictures you see of the going out on a flight. They were all suiting up and probably with their own parachutes again. They may have packed those themselves. And this is a training class. And if you look close, you'll see that this particular pilot group has got men and women in it. So they were a little bit integrated, I suppose. This picture shows somebody in the cockpit getting ready to fly PT-19, which we talked about a minute ago. And that picture on the lower right is the zoot suits I mentioned. These are the flight suits that these women were issued to use, and you can just see how too big they are. Let's see here. I've said a lot of this, so I don't want to go over it again. That base was called the Avenger Airfield. That's I couldn't remember the name Avenger a few minutes ago. So a lot of these women, the pilots, the WASP also became known as the Avenger Girls. Most of that's repeat I put in here. I put notes in here that I'd used already to remind myself in case I missed something. Now it's confusing me. So I'll move on to the next page. Again, training. One of the things they did was tow targets. Now that's may not sound like a big deal, but when they towed targets, that meant somebody was shooting at them. And that's a bulletin board on the left that shows when training flights were going out, and they were looking to see when they were going out, when they would be flying. That lower picture kind of shows you how close the target might be to the airplane, and that's being shot at by somebody probably coming in. I hope they were coming in from the right or the left. This was live ammo they were being shot at with during this practice. And that was actually a mission that some of the men didn't want to fly, it turns out. A lot of the planes that were doing the towing got hit. In fact, some of the WASP pilots and women were actually took rounds during that training. So anyway, I'm going to keep moving here. So, and this is just a P-47 Thunderbolt, again, a really hot airplane that these women are flying, B-17s, of course. And now just a quick bit, and I'm going to see if I can't make this a little bit smaller. Did I lose Mark? No, he's just been quiet and patient. I mentioned Hazel Ying Lee a minute ago. She was the first Chinese American to fly in the U.S. military, which wasn't considered military again. Damn it. She served in Michigan, and then she was trained in pursuit school in Texas, which meant she was trained to fly Mustangs and that sort of thing. She was one of the first people to ever fly the P-63 King Cobra, which was another airplane that came out late in the war to supplement the Mustang. Cobras, Air Cobras, were built by the Bell Corporation, and Americans didn't like them as well as they did Mustangs and things. But we gave a lot of them to the Russians during World War II, and they loved them apparently.
Ian.
Hi, Ian. I didn't see you.
It's a loop of me.
No, it's not. I promise you, he's there for real.
I'm here. I just don't have a lot of knowledge or information.
Let's see here. I was going to say, tragically, she died in the line of duty less than a month before the program was actually ended. She collided with another airplane. She was delivering a P-63 to an airport and was on final approach to the airport, and somebody else flew in to the either flew up under her and hit her, or came in beside her and hit her. But somehow another pilot tried to get in the pattern and knocked her plane out of control, and she died. And again, she was the last WASP to die in service of doing this.
These gals were all heroes that deserve.
They were all heroes who deserved
more than they got.
And they fought for a long time. I'll talk about that just a little bit more in a minute. But they fought for a long time to get any recognition in this regard. This young lady,
ridiculous.
It is.
They had to fight for that.
It's disgraceful, I think. But anyway, this young lady earned her pilot's license. I'm losing my voice. In 1939 as a civilian, joined the WASP in 43, and she was still around a few years ago. I think she passed away in 2016, but she's standing beside her favorite airplane. She always said was the Mustang, and I think this is a Mustang in the photograph that she actually flew. She was another one who flew the high performance airplane. So that's a P-38 Lightning, which was a very famous airplane in World War II. And that one beside it is the lesser known P-63 King Cobra. She also flew it. This is Betty Gillis. I mentioned her earlier. She was one of the few women who was checked out and flew B-17s. And she also flew the P-47 Thunderbolts, which, like I said, was a monster of an airplane that wreaked a lot of havoc on the German airplanes and once they got to Europe. This is Evelyn Geneva Sharpie. She was famous for also flying for the P-38s, but she lost an engine during takeoff and was killed. Again, all done service. Now, Cornelia Fort. I knew of Cornelia Fort when I worked in Nashville. There was a small airport, which those are pictures of on the right, of what everybody called the fort down there, and it was Cornelia Fort Airport. It was a small civilian airport by the time I was around. And a lot of small businesses and things that had aircraft were flying out of the fort. They instead of coming into the big airport, they went to Cornelia Fort. I never knew who she was. Didn't know much about her. It turns out she was also one of the WASPs that died in service. But what I didn't know and what I found was fascinating, because I always thought this was made up. If you ever watch the movie Tora, 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 there's a scene where there's a woman with a student in a biplane flying over Hawaii, and suddenly they look around and they're surrounded by Japanese Zeros. Well, turns out that was a true story, and that person was Cornelia Fort. She was out in Hawaii doing flight training, giving training to other people. I don't think she was part of the military or WASP at that time. That's partly why she joined WASP. But she was the one that was in that airplane. That was a real story. That really happened. And so she went on to do a lot of other stuff. She actually flew with the Royal Air Force a little bit when they were using women. Let's see what she was. Let me see what she was doing. Oh, she was in Hawaii waiting evacuation, and she didn't get back to Nashville from that until after all that stuff had happened. So she was there when it did. She died on a routine flight with another airplane. Again, another airplane hit hers. Didn't have a lot of information about whether that was a male or female pilot. They could have been in formation. I mean, you never know who it might have been. I mean, it's bad. It seems like some of the ones that happened were caused by men trying to show off, which we're kind of bad about strutting around and doing that. Cock-a-doodle-doo, crowing, and just that's kind of what men do, I guess. This lady I put in here for a particular reason because, well, no, I haven't got to her yet. These two women. Excuse me, I got the wrong. I was looking at the wrong picture. The two women in this photograph are standing. That first man is I can't remember if he was Colonel. Yeah, Colonel Tibbets. I don't know if you know who that was or not, but Colonel Tibbets flew the Enola Gay and dropped the first atomic bomb. He was also in charge of trying to get B-29s moved and ferried out to the Pacific theater of war, and he was having trouble getting men to fly them. So he was part of that effort to show that, hey, you guys should be able to fly these. Women can fly them. It turns out the B-29 had some real issues early on, and they lost a fairly good number of them actually to engine fires. They had some engine problems with them that they were trying to fix, and by the end of the war, they had them fixed. But early on in the war, some of the men said, "We ain't flying that thing; it's a death trap." So they got women to do it. So these two women were the first women that were ever checked out to fly a B-29, and Tibbets, and they flew all around the country to different military bases, basically showing the men that, hey, these girls can do it. You should be able to also. Now, this is young lady, Madge Moore, was a WASP. And first thing that happened was Jimmy Carter signed a law in 1979 that allowed women who had served in WASP made them official armed service, made them official that they were in the armed forces. So a lady died named Elaine Harmon, and she had cancer, and for years she fought. That happened in '79, and then Miss Harmon, or yeah, she didn't have rank, wanted to be buried at Arlington National Cemetery, and Arlington said, "No, too bad. You're a woman. We'll let you be buried at some other small local military cemetery if you want to be, but no military honors or anything." Well, she fought that till the day she died, and her daughter, which is the lady I heard speaking at this seminar at Oshkosh this year, fought to get her ashes interred at Arlington. And in 19, I'm still living in the last century. In 2016, a legislation was finally passed that allowed this to happen. One of the reasons that they said they didn't want to bury these women at Arlington was because, well, we don't want them to take up too much space. We want to make sure we've got it open for soldiers, guys that really fought and stuff. And but the legislation, the Congress finally passed a law that said, no, these women should be honored the same way. They did the same crap that men did because they had men that flew these ferry runs also, and if they died in a crash, they were able to be buried in Arlington or have honors. Same women could be flying right beside them and die, and they got nothing. So they finally fixed that, and she was buried Miss Harmon was buried at Arlington. Well, they also finally passed legislation to honor these women by giving them the Congressional Gold Medal, which is not exactly a Medal of Honor kind of thing, but it has pretty high status. And this lady, Madge Moore, is showing hers off after she got it. She was still around. Unfortunately, a lot of the women who were WASP weren't with us anymore, so they didn't get that honor. But their family did. And this was I just put this in for the end thing. And it's a monument that was, I can't remember where this was placed. This may be at the airport, Avenger Airport. They were only in existence for a couple of years. And then as the war started to wind down, they said, oh, we don't need you anymore. So they just cut them all loose. And they were all out there just looking for jobs like everybody else after that. So let me see here. That's I told all that. So anyway, they were disbanded. So that's the end. What I wanted to, real quick, I just have some slides here, and I'm going to close my window, and just that way I can see the chat again. And I'll run. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Hang on. Didn't mean to close it in that way. Duh. Well, that's what happens when you do something out of sequence. So you don't know how to do it. I have to back out and do it all from the beginning. Now, I was just going to real quick going through some of the airplanes that these ladies flew. This is a P-38 Lightning, an airplane that the Germans referred to as the fork-tailed devil, because it was such a superior fighter of its day. And the Japanese didn't like them much either.
I think that's the plane that they used to fly over when the Rangers went in and liberated Cabanatuan.
Might be. I just read that book.
I think they flew. What's the author? Gosh darn it. Sides is his last name.
They wrote that book?
Yeah, they flew this plane over the camp to distract the Japanese.
I think I put that on my shelf back there. I just read that.
Hampton Sides. Ghost Soldiers is the name of the book.
Ghost Soldiers is the name of the book, yeah.
And the Rangers went in and liberated those guys that had been in
I'm sorry. And you probably already saw this and laughed about it. Ian talking about he thought this was going to be stories about you haven't lived until you've had wasp up your leg or something. Could have been, Ian. I get how you might have thought that.
Well, we would have probably caught them waspers, but there you go.
Yeah, we probably would have.
But I think that's the plane they flew over that camp.
Now, I think you're right. I think
to distract the guards at that camp and liberate those guys.
Yeah. So anyway, and I have a kind of a link to this airplane, just barely. You guys may or may not remember this story. It's been probably 20 years ago, maybe when it started. They found some of these in a glacier in Greenland. As some of the glaciers start. In fact, they found quite a few airplanes up there now, because if you lost an engine or an airplane ran out of fuel and you didn't make it to the airport up there, you basically landed them on the ice, and most of them sat there. They didn't go back and get them. A lot of times they just went and got another airplane, flew it on to England. But there were a small squadron of these went down on the ice cap in Greenland. And a few years ago, like I said, they found some. And a guy that had I guess more money than God, helped them make a machine that actually bored down into the ice with hot water and made a huge tunnel through the ice. Literally, put boiling water in it, melted the ice, and sucked that water off until they got to the airplane, and then they used the same device to flood all around the airplane again down in the ice cap, and they took it apart and brought it up, and it became known as the help me out here, babe. No. Anyway, they brought it. I'll tell you in a minute. It'll pop in my head in just a minute.
We
So,
can't think of nothing no more.
No, I can't, especially when I want to. They brought it to Middlesboro, Kentucky airport because that's where the guy was from that had the money, and or at least the guy that eventually sort of claimed it. He was with them, but he wasn't the original guy that found it. Anyway, and they rebuilt it. And I went up, Phil and I rode up there on our motorcycles 2 or 3 times to see them building it. And I've got, in fact, I've got a cup around here somewhere with the airplane on it, a coffee cup. And CRS disease. You betcha, Tina. You betcha. I got it bad. And Phil and I went back up there, and a good friend of mine, my family, mom and dad's, they were my mom and dad's contemporaries. Name was Ted Phillips. He was in the military during World War II, and he either worked on these airplanes during the war or had something to do with them. So he found out that they were going to fly this airplane, and he actually drove from Johnson City down to up to Millsboro, Kentucky, and was there the same day. And we were all there when they flew her on her new maiden voyage. Glacier Girls. See, it did come back, and it just the tapes run a little slower than digital stuff does. It seems like it's slower because it's all up here in analog.
It's all reel to reel, buddy.
Yeah, it's not digital like everything else, so it takes it a minute. But anyway, she was called the Glacier Girl, and I don't know if it originally had a name or not, but that's the name they dubbed it. Beautiful airplanes, just really cool. This is the famous P-51 Mustang. That one's actually in combat because you see it's got 1, 2, 3, 6 marks on it. He's an ace. If he's shot down more than 5 of the enemy, that made him an ace.
In the European theater.
I had to wind it to the correct place, and that's harder to do than you think if you're trying to wind back in your mind and find that correct place while you're also talking about something else. That's another skill that young people aren't going to have because they're going to have it all, click, click, click. Anyway, P-51 Mustang, probably maybe one of the 2 most famous fighter aircraft in World War II. I think the other one was probably a Spitfire, the British Spitfire. This is the B-17 bomber, which some of these ladies flew overseas. A big airplane, although small by some standards, it looks big, and if you see it by itself, it's big. But if you see it beside a B-29, which I'm going to show you in a minute, it doesn't look so big. B-29 was a huge airplane, and there it sits. And you can get kind of a general size reference because these 3 men are standing under the wing. And I just read and I'm sure I've read all these specs before on this airplane, but the wingspan on a B-29 was 141 feet. That's quite large.
That's quite large.
That's quite large even by today's standards, to be honest. Well, and you can get a good example of that on the left-hand picture. And one of the reasons they built it that way was that airplane was built to be a fairly fast bomber. Once it got up to speed, it was pretty fast. And to fly at really high altitudes. And this type of wing is better at high altitudes than a short, fat wing or stubbier wing like they were flying on other things, relatively stubbier. And so that's part of the reason why it had such long wingspans. This airplane had some other really cool factors, like the nose section where all the pilot, co-pilot, bombardier, and the navigator was pressurized, So they weren't freezing to death like the guys in the B-17s were. They were cold in those things. You get up to 30,000 feet in a B-17 with all the doors open and the guns sticking out of the side windows, the waist gunners and all that, and you're talking about guys coming home with frostbite. And the tail section where the tail gunner was located was pressurized. But you couldn't get there. You couldn't just walk back through there to get to that. You had to slide through a tunnel that went through the bomb bays and across the gear and the wing section. That then the tunnel went back to another section, which was pressurized, which was kind of their living quarters. This thing could stay up for a long time. This is the beat that I mentioned. I think a C1 or a 54. I can't remember the number. It was a transport. DC-4 is what I would have called it from the military or from civilian use. Some of the women were flying these. This was a new large aircraft that came out just before the war, and Douglas built for the military. In fact, they may have built it for the military first, and then developed the civilian version of it.
They were just for troop transport, right?
And cargo.
And cargo.
This was cargo and transport. This was not a bomber. This was never designed to be one. This was strictly to haul troops and to haul cargo and stuff in. And some of the women, if I'm not mistaken, some of these women pilots flew cargo in these airplanes, which would have made them a prime target if the enemy had realized, what was going on, which I'm sure they did. Although I don't know if any of them got shot down. But the top bird is the P-36 Airacobra. What was really unique about this airplane was, and this was one of the first model airplanes I ever built. I always had a soft spot in my heart for this because I thought it was a beautiful airplane. The engine is located back here over the wing, and it had a drive shaft that went all the way up to here and drove the propeller. And somewhere here, and I'm still not sure I understand how this works. They built the cannon on the inside of that drive shaft. So somewhere along here, there's a mechanism that feeds cannon shells and fires cannon through that drive shaft. Now, how they did that, I do not know. I still don't understand that. But it had like a 20 millimeter cannon in the nose. It's one of its primary weapon systems. And like I said, I still don't know how they did that. Messerschmitt 109 had something similar to it on it also. But this engine, they did this because they were playing with the weight and balance and the center of gravity. They thought if they put the engine in the middle, the airplane would be, better balanced, better able to twist and turn. And you didn't have all that weight in the front and all that gyroscopic energy up there because the prop's spinning, and then you got an engine that's actually spinning internally. And both of those things create torque, which causes the airplane to want to go one way or the other. And by putting it in the middle, you separate those two things a little bit and change the flight characteristic. Bottom picture is one of the PT trainers. That's one of the ones with the upside down engine. I've had my hands. That's the one I had my hands on at one time. Thought we were going to rebuild, but like I said, the spar and that was all wood, and all the inside structure of that airplane was wood, and the spar was too far rotten. We couldn't do it. Apparently, you couldn't rebuild them. Nobody was doing that work at that.
So what was wood? The whole body of the thing?
A lot of the internals were wood, and it had fabric over the wood. All the stuff in the wing was all wood. That's what on that airplane rotted. That wing it had been left out and not taken care of, and the spar rotted. But the engine, we had the engine that used to sit in the barn down at my buddy's house, Steve Hensley, who I was flying with it when they got me into airplanes. That's an upside down straight 6 cylinders in a row, upside down, which I always thought was just so strange. It was built by a company by the name of Ranger.
Why did they do that?
Well, actually, the ME-109 German airplane was like that too. Whoever designed that particular engine thought that would be a good way to do it. I don't know why. I don't know what their thinking was at the time, but it worked. I mean, they were apparently pretty reliable engines, but you had to be careful about oil. If you left it parked too long, you had to make sure you moved the prop through several cycles by hand, because if you had an oil leak inside a cylinder, you could get a compression lock, which broke all kinds of stuff if you hit it with a starter button. But anyway, they had that issue. But other than that, I guess they were pretty good. I don't know if that might have been a British engine originally. I'm not sure about that. I know they had some upside down stuff. I say upside down. Maybe they got it right side up and everything else was backwards. I don't know. We worked on primarily airplanes that had a Garrett PT or a T, what was called a 331 Garrett engine, and everything we worked on was built where the intake was on the bottom. So to us, that was right side up. The
Right.
intake on the bottom. Well, there were 2 or 3 airplanes that had that engine on it, including the OV-10 Bronco military. It was flipped over. So we always call that upside down. Well, then I found out years later that actually that's the way they built the engine originally, and everybody else turned it over. So, what's right side up to me may be upside down to somebody else, I guess. Again, a couple more trainers. The PT-13 in the lower left, one of my favorite airplanes of all time, the Boeing PT-17 or the Stearman. They had a bunch of other numbers. The one we had was the 17. I think there was a 75-75 number. This one's painted up in U.S. Navy training colors. The Navy, the Army, Air Corps, lots of people use this as a trainer. These airplanes went on to become, after World War II, you could buy stuff like this cheap. Somebody could say, oh, yeah, I bought a B-52. No, you couldn't get a B-52. Heard a guy say he bought a B-25 Mitchell bomber after World War II. And that sounds like a lot. And I don't know what he paid for it. He probably paid a fair bit of money for it. But they were dirt cheap back then. They were the military was getting rid of this stuff. They were either scrapping it, putting it in a scrapyard, or they were selling it, for pennies on the dollar. So a lot of this stuff got bought up. The Stearman became crop dusters or air show airplanes. And so you see a lot of them in air shows now. There was a couple of them flying air shows at Oshkosh this year. Now, the airplane in the upper left-hand corner is special to me because that's the airplane. And this airplane was also known as the Bamboo Bomber. Now, it's a Cessna. And the only reason I ever heard that they called it a Bamboo Bomber is because, again, it had a lot of wood in it. A lot of the interior frames and parts were made out of wood. But what's really cool about this airplane to me is this is the airplane that Sky King flew when he first started the television show. Sky King. This is the airplane he flew. Now, later on, Sky King flew a more modern, another Cessna 310 tricycle geared twin engine airplane. But he started out flying a Bamboo Bomber, because I used to tell people that's not the airplane that Sky King flew. I know it's not. Well, it was this airplane. It was the Bamboo Bomber. I think they called it a C-54 or something. This is that Marauder I was talking about earlier. That it was kind of a hot rod for medium bombers at that time. They used to have a phrase about the wing because it was higher wing loading. They used to refer to it as the, let me figure out how to say this diplomatically or genteelly. It was sort of like a woman of ill repute, let's say. All but no visible means of support is how I'm not saying it right. If I don't say it correctly, I can't say it correctly. But to show you kind of what I meant by a hot rod, this is a military poster that was created to get people on board to come on, learn to fly, and maybe look what you could fly. And they have this thing depicted as a the heroes in this story, at least. But they were really fast. Uh, they didn't get used as much. You rarely ever hear about them. Like I said, the guy I knew that I
Says
used.
they're the greatest team in the world, man.
Yeah,
They're on the
absolutely.
poster.
The Army Air Forces. Again, that's I can't remember when they said that poster came out, but it was a recruiting poster in mid. But
Well,
they
prior
airplanes.
to the end of the war,
Yeah, prior to the end of the war, obviously, but I'm not sure what year. But it was after they had created this airplane because they wanted to use it for that reason. Uh, the guy I knew that worked on these in the military, his name was Harold Manning. And I learned a lot from Harold too. He was a good guy, and he was working on these. Like I said, and they flew these in Vietnam for a while. They flew ground support with them, probably for Marines in there at the time. They also had several of these, including his airplane that he was crew chief on, sitting on a runway and somewhere in Central Florida, with the engines running, fully loaded, uh, and prepared to attack Cuba when the Bay of Pigs happened. Don't nobody. That's not a story you hear. I never read or heard that story from anybody, but him. But Harold, and he said they were ready to go in. Of course, we didn't do it because that whole thing fell apart. So we kind of left those guys hanging in a way, and we didn't. So these airplanes, they didn't go. They didn't send them down there to fly ground support for the Cubans that were trying to run Castro out. But anyway, we were still flying these airplanes. They were still can't think of the right word. They were still able to do their job. This is the P-47 Jug. This airplane, even before the Mustang arrived in Europe, this airplane had turned the tide of the air war over there because it was just one heck of a fighter and was just knocking the socks off everything the Germans had, and it was a hell of a ground support aircraft. It had, I think, 8 50 caliber machine guns in it, plus it could carry small ordnance under the wing. So they were a heck of a strafing air support type airplane. And these are all links. And I was going to copy and paste these. If anybody wants to read anything about all this stuff, the battle to get buried in the national cemeteries, it's all right here. Like I said, I was going to sit here and copy and paste them all in, but I guess I don't know. Can you guys tell me? You're not able to copy those, are you? Well, if anybody wants one, let me know. I'll be glad to send it to them. If I sit there and do it, I might be able to.
I think we can copy them, buddy.
Maybe. Well, maybe you can. So I hope so. I think that's the end of the show, and I'll really shut up and go back to where I can see everybody. And
these gals were like the foremothers of all the women that are serving today.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, exactly. I mean, these women served in the military.
That are doing, they're flying combat missions and rescue missions and doing grand work.
It's really
as we knew they could do.
They were badasses. That's right, Brenda. And it really is a wonder, and who knows, it could have happened. They were flying so close to action and during combat. I mean, they were flying airplanes into England, during the Blitz.
Right.
Well, actually, the Blitz about maybe over by the time they started. But women were flying bombers and ferrying bombers around in England during that time. Some American women, like Jackie Cochran, and mostly British women, they very well could have been involved in combat even then. And, we don't know about it. That's quite possible that they could have been, and, it just never got reported that way because they weren't supposed to be there, so we wouldn't want to talk about that. But it happened. And, it's that the Chinese American lady who died. I never heard of her. I've been in I was in aviation a lot, and I grew up, you know, reading and besides history, other history. My other favorite pastime was learning about airplanes and stuff. Now I never heard of her. I heard of the WASP. I knew what a WASP was, but I always thought they were part of the military. I always assumed that they were, Air
Yeah,
Force.
I thought they were serving.
Well, they were serving. They just weren't
No,
getting drafted.
I thought they were. I thought they were an official part of the
I
military.
did too. And then for them to die transporting their aircraft, and for the military not to help get
And
them
like,
home,
we're not even going to give you a flag.
that's that's bad. That's terrible. I mean that just I like that.
Sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but that was
No, that's okay. It was hot.
It was kind of funny.
Well, and it was kind of hot, so go ahead. And it's also going to stain my shirt. It's a relatively new shirt.
Because just like you were saying earlier,
We laugh,
us men are gonna like
do things,
hot dog and laugh at each other.
and then right, and that's exactly right. Are you telling me I'm pathetic or some? Oh, you're talking about the military stuff. I
It's
can't.
pathetic.
Brenda, we'll have to treat this stain. Don't let me forget. We watched it. I told her I got a couple of new shirts recently.
That's
This one,
pathetic because you spilled coffee on your shirt, or that's
no, I think
pathetic.
she's talking about the fact that they weren't giving credit.
The fact that these women weren't recognized is ridiculous.
But she could mean it's pathetic that
It's pathetic that you spilled coffee on your orange shirt.
Hard to take the peacock out of even civilized men. Ain't that the truth, Ian? It's amazing. I mean, you think about something like this happening, and we think that was the middle of the 20th century, and we're still doing that crap. And it's kind of sad because there were cultures in history where women fought side by side with men. There were Celtic female warriors. There were women who became known, in history or in legend as the Amazons. Those characters were actually based on women who fought, who were warriors.
Shield maidens for the Vikings.
Yeah, they weren't treated.
I think now, at least partially, they're recognizing the efforts of the gals that served in our most recent conflicts. But
yeah, I think so. But
I hope so, because they darn sure did some stuff.
But we just, I don't know.
Saved a lot of folks.
Well, you got women flying in the modern Air Force and Navy who have gone in and rescued people. You've got them that are out there fighting side by side with other male pilots. They've done bombing missions and ground support missions in the air. I mean, they're doing all that stuff, and now I think mostly they get credit for it. I don't.
Wonderful helicopter pilots that are flying into the middle of the bad stuff to pick up, the fellows.
I do, I sure do. And pro tip, I search to match your preferred beverage. Oh my goodness! I don't need
I'm
that.
Getting to the point where I need that for food too.
Well, I promised Brenda I wouldn't eat in this shirt. But here I have spilled coffee on it, so that will stain. I'll have to get that put in. I can't, you know. In fact, Brenda made me a bib to put on over my sort of to protect my shirt fronts. And last night we were having spaghetti. I didn't have this shirt on, but I had a blue.
Your beard's almost a bib, buddy.
Well, it is. It catches food, but then it depends on what it is.
But then it hits lower down.
Yeah, it hits lower down and towards the belly there to hit. Last night I had on kind of a blue shirt and we had spaghetti. She said, "You're going to put that bib on." And she said, "I'm going to pin it so it don't open." Because it opens. He made one that opened. It's got little hook loop fasteners, a hook in the front, not a hook and loop, but a hook. And she pinned it. She said, "I want spaghetti sauce on this shirt." I can't argue with her. I mean, I've got too many ruined shirts. I mean, brown shirts are gross. Oh, he don't like brown shirts. Well, you know what, Ian? I've got my other brand new shirt is a really dark, almost coffee color, and and you can't see it unless you look real close. So that's a good color. But I got coffee on it the other day. I took it back to Brenda and I showed it to her and I said, "Looky here." This was a pattern for a bib that they use in nursing homes. Oh, that's where you got that. I did not realize that. Hey, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to a little bit safer cup here.
Oh, my goodness.
I like that being a coffee cup, but it, for some reason, I got it on a heater and it's not keeping it warm as I like it. And it obviously sloshes out easier than I realized. So, you know, I was clean that up.
What? I sent out that picture of the tiger moth that I found in my wife's.
Yeah, that was gorgeous.
Oh, beautiful creature. But it was in Shauna's laundry room. I shouldn't call it Shauna's laundry room. I'm the one that ruins clothing like regularly. And I said it was her room of despair.
She said, "Let you, my bib has
Probably disgust and despair." But yours has horses and cowboy stuff on it.
Yeah, my bib does. Now I see people when they eat, what is it, lobster or crab legs or something, they give people these big plastic looking bibs to keep them from getting it all over their clothing.
Yeah.
I've seen that in restaurants. Carol said, "Luckily, I'm repping Western Michigan University today, brown and gold." I'm grateful for her son for choosing that school. I bet he never thought about it that way, though, Carol.
Well, he wouldn't care about it.
He wouldn't care about it. Yeah, that'd be the other thing.
That's the part. That's the part that some folks don't understand, is that we don't care.
Well, for the most part, no. Oh,
my major professor in grad school, who you met. Oh, that's gorgeous.
That's my cowboy bib.
My major prof, as you remember, Shemnitz.
Yeah. Shemnitz, yeah.
Rest in peace, brother. He wore those big Motel 6 kind of looking ties that he'd made out of curtains. And I never once ate a meal with that man that he didn't use his tie as a napkin.
And, I've seen people do that on TV. I didn't know people did that for real. But you know what? That might be the best use of a tie I've ever heard.
He grew up in western Oklahoma, and he couldn't help himself.
Carol's the truth. true timber mark.
you know, if you're gonna wear one of those darn things, use it for something of value.
He will, Carol. Just give him time. He'll dribble. We all do at some point, I think.
Yeah, he'll catch up.
He'll catch up eventually, and then
And sometimes it'll be catch up.
it'll be catch up. That's right. Oh man. And somebody's going to laugh at him, just like he's probably points and laughs at you for dribbling now. Yeah, and maybe he'll remember. Oh wow, I did that to my mom. I'm sorry. I used to make fun of my mom for that.
Oh my goodness.
I hear lawnmowers running, and people next mowing. I
Uh-oh.
guess that's always the pressure you feel when you live near a neighbor. You don't have that problem, but if you got neighbors that mow their yard every 2 days or so and keep it about that high, or an exact measurement of 2 inches or
Well,
something.
my wife feels that pressure all the time.
I try not to, even though we've got it next door. Ian says, was a steakhouse in Denver for years. They cut those ties off and put it on their walls. True story. That place caught fire. Burned to the ground. Too much wood and polyester. Why did they cut them off, Ian? Because they were using them for napkins? You can't just say that without giving us a little bit more background.
They had begun dabbing.
I bet you anything that's what they were doing. I mean, you got caught dabbing with your tie, they would
come over and clip it off your neck.
Which is kind of funny. I mean, you think about it. Again, I have to say I've never been a tie wearer, and when I have, I hated it. So I think using it for a napkin might be one of the better uses of it I could think of.
I haven't worn a tie since ROTC. Literally,
it's not hot.
One of my other professors asked Sandy to stand up at a big old meeting we were having with all these professional wildlife folks, and Sanford thought he was going to be recognized like for something cool. And
I think you're going to let the elk out.
And he said, I want you to take note of Sanford Chemnitz. He's the only person that I know that personally makes his ties out of Motel 6 curtains. And there were he always wore those big old wide ties, and it was like,
well, that was the thing.
And he did not take it well.
I bet. I can remember when Dad wore those big ties
but I miss him.
I remember the little bitty skinny ties that came out, and then they went to that big wide style tie. My dad had some.
The 1970 tie. Big old paisley, gross looking.
Carol, you're probably right. That probably would be a fun place. 20 days until Brenda's birthday. Now, what brought that up? Are you hitting on us for gifts or recognition? It's even less. August is the month of birthdays. Every 7 days in August, starting on the 14th, we have a birthday. Kelly, Brenda, and then Jennifer.
They're all in 1 month, though?
They're all this month in August. They're all in August. Yes, 1 month.
And Dad's mixed in there too. So
Dad's is right around Brenda's. It's either the day before or day after. I can't remember which it is. I don't think they're the same day. Brenda's is the 22nd.
Dad's is the 21st.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Because I can remember us doing things when we lived up there, and your dad's birthday'd be on the 21st and Brenda's would be on the 22nd. So
There's so many now. I can't. I need
a lot to keep up with.
I need a calendar.
Officially, I only have to keep up with 3.
Thank God for Facebook, I guess.
Yeah, that's usually what I remember.
Hey, it's such and such's birthday today.
I can't remember. Is yours August 4th?
Mine?
Yeah, not August, November. Is it
Yeah.
November 4th?
5th.
The 5th. See, Phil's is about the same time yours is. His is in November also, but I can't remember.
I was supposed to be born on the 10th. But
Oh, you were supposed to be?
I showed up a little bit early. Yeah.
Oh, yes, Carol. There are lots of milestones in August. I don't know how it turned out that way. We didn't really think about it ahead of time. It just happened that way. Phil's is the 4th and yours is the 5th.
I was supposed to be the 10th because there's another birthday that day, and I came
the Marine Corps birthday.
I come out just a little bit early, which was for my mother because I was a big old baby.
I'm sure she was happy about that.
She was glad.
Yeah, when is your birthday? The 19th. Well, see, now that's not 7 days from anything we got. That's what's unique about the girls. I mean, they're all 7 days apart. And you'll be 50 years old, huh? Not you, Ian.
Holy buckets. That's ancient.
7, 18, or 19.
I like the fact that I get to start talking like that. Like, well, you're just a kid.
Well, Carol's got a sister that's birthday's on the 20th. The girls were supposed to be born on the same day in August, but since I was having a C-section, that's right. She chose Kelly's birthday. I asked her when, and by that point, she said, "I'm done with this. Let's do it, and let's get it out here." It's Ian says I'm a youngin'. Yeah, you are a youngin'.
You're young, and I remember when
I believe you're
young. And my wife calls me a baby because she's older than I am. And she always goes, well, you were barely even like a gleam in your daddy's eye.
Brenda likes to use hers as, well, you're older than I am by 8 months, or not 8 months, by 5 months, I guess. So when my birthday happens in March, she'll always say, "Now you're older than I am." And so after that, for about that many months, she'll say, "Well, you're older than I am. You ought to know," or "You're older than I am. What are you going to do about that?" I mean, and I'm like, "We're the same age." Yeah, we graduate in 80 and 75. In fact, we got a 50th anniversary. We got a 50th reunion coming up, which we're planning to go to. I think
you guys need to go to that.
We are. We're planning on going. Now I've said it out loud in my mind. I've got to look at the date again. I think, and it may be on Jen's birthday. That's what I was thinking. Jen's is the 30th, and for some reason I was thinking that was the day, but I'm not positive. Let me look while we're talking about other things.
And your wife said, "We paid the money, so we're going, buddy."
Yeah. I know.
You done bought your.
I was planning. I've been planning on
your ticket, buddy.
I've been planning on going all along, so I don't have a problem with that. Oh, what's her name? Brenda, what's her first name? I'm looking for the email. I probably got the hard copy of the letter here somewhere in front of me. Hard copy, hear that? I bet everybody doesn't even say that anymore. People just say that. I mean, they don't even say that. They just don't even think that way.
Did I share with you my hard copy of the letter I got from Senator John Barrasso?
Well, you may not have shown it to me.
Telling me that, like, thank you for your comment.
Yeah. I found it. Here it is. They made the top fonts are in Davy Crockett High School colors. Buckskin and gold, I believe is what it's called.
Buckskin and gold.
Yep. On Jennifer's birthday, August the 30th.
The old brown and gold.
But I'll be here I'll probably do a show that day anyway, because we won't be quick. It doesn't start till 3 p.m. And it only takes about an hour to get there. So, well, maybe an hour and a half at the most. Nah, we can be there in an hour.
From Rogersville?
Well, we got to go to Johnson City, and now it's just straight up the interstate. There's an interstate highway that runs literally.
There's a whole highway that goes up there now.
Yeah, it didn't used to be that way. It used to take longer, but well, it might take more than an hour, but it won't be much more. We're not going to spend the night or anything. We're just going to.
Well, it don't go right by the high school, though, does it?
No, but it's not going to be at the high school. It's going to be at a place in Johnson City. They couldn't.
Oh, they're not even going to have it at.
No, and I keep thinking that too. We may go now. They're also doing a thing Friday night at the There's a football game Friday night, and they invited people to come go to that and meet up. And we may do that, and that is at the high school. But to do that, I'll cut across and go to Greenville. That'd be the shortest way to get there.
The last football game I was at David Crockett High School, the announcer was announcing, and he said, he's at the 50, he's at the 40, he's at the 30, he's at the 20. Look at that son of a bitch run. And I don't think he announced any more football games after that.
That's probably his last deal right there. And
my goodness.
We don't have to get too specific about that now, Ian or Brenda. Let's just say that's how it worked out, kind of.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, that's always one of those romantical holidays.
Okay, says they have 3 birthdays in August too. The 6th, the 27th, and the 31st. But see, you guys somebody didn't get fancy like we did and make them 7 days apart. Which we didn't even realize till years later. It's sometime later, and I started adding the days up, and I said, those are everybody's 7 days apart. Probably me trying to figure out birthday presents and stuff. Oh me! I was watching. I was going to tell you, I saw your buddy Barrasso. I think is that his name?
Senator John.
Yeah, I think I saw him at Cheyenne during the rodeo.
Oh, I bet he was there.
He was. I know at least one time they introduced him on stage as, "Hey, look here, who we got with us today, Mr. Representative or Senator or whatever he is. John Barrasso is with us. How about you, John? How you doing, Mr. Barrasso? Just how important is the rodeo in your political?" I just asked him a couple of things I thought were kind of dumb because, well, of course he's going to say that. Anyway, I didn't realize that I had alphabetized the kids' names. Oh, because Jennifer Lee and Kelly Marie, you get JKLM. Yeah, I don't know when you realized that either.
Hmm.
But I'm pretty sure that the 7-day thing, I was trying to figure out when your birthday was and the girls one time, and it's when I realized that the 7-day thing came into play. Oh, I'm going to show you something, and but this is something you and I need to talk about later, or today, or tomorrow, or because we never got a chance to. Yet. I was going to mention it. Look what I got in the mail.
Look at that gorgeous piece of work.
And you know what this is? Hickory. I believe this is hickory.
That's that Ben Pearson bow.
That Ben Pearson that I thought was a takedown. Thought. Because now I think it might not have been, but it's still really odd that it's made the way it is. So I'm not 100% sure about that. But if it is, I've got there. It doesn't have whatever it took to clamp it together right here. If it had that, then I would think so. I think it actually was made this way. But it must have somehow that joint.
The joint wasn't there.
Well, it had to have been. It's too perfect. I mean, it matches everything. This
Is it
wood.
underneath that handle?
I just tied this on here so I could show it to you as a whole piece. But if I take this off, you'll see that the two parts and the parts that we thought but I've looked it over. There's really no cracks in it. The cracks that I think you saw were right here around this handle piece. This shelf was added on.
Yeah.
And so that's got a little crack, but that can be re-glued and fixed. That can
But
be
that ain't no big deal. That's not a working part of the
no.
rim.
What I am going to have to fix if I want to. I don't know if and I said when I got it that I may never shoot it. I just thought it was a really good look. I just liked it, so it could hang on the wall, and that may be all it ever does. But I would like to investigate either a way to make this a takedown, like make it two pieces like it is, or I need to glue it back together and then maybe put a piece of buckskin around it right here.
That's easy. That's easy, dude.
Yeah, but whoever had it before had started sanding on it a little bit to refinish it. So I'm definitely gonna do that. And but I was looking them up, and this particular brand, this Deer Slayer version, is always listed in Ben Pearson's notebook as a hickory bow, and they sold hickory staves if you wanted to make one yourself, and they sold yew and hickory and something else, I think. And then of course they started making fiberglass bows later. These are the arrows that were with it. That broadhead, which I think is a really good looking broadhead myself.
That's beautiful.
And looks like they could be razor sharp.
Look at the fletchings.
Oh, that's missing a feather. I think they were all there, so I better knock it off here somewhere. The feathers need to be redone. I'm gonna clean these up a little bit, but I'd like to keep these original. I think I'm just for hanging on the wall. This one almost looks like it's got blood on it, but I'm not sure. Could have. Anyway, the arrows are straight. I mean, you could shoot these today. They're not. The fletchings are coming unglued. That would have to be fixed, or you'd lose them when you shot it. But anyway, I still think it was a cool acquisition and a good for not much money. And I'm still not 100%. I'm still not 100% convinced it wasn't designed to be a takedown. It's definitely a two-piece bow, the way it was built. And it just seems odd to me that they would have done that. I don't know. There's something odd in that to me about that. you would almost thought they would have used one piece for that whole stave, one stave to make that
Yes,
whole.
they used 2 billets.
But it looks like they used 2 billets, which may be how they sold billet. So I guess they expected other people to do something similar to that. Maybe they came with that dovetail. The dovetail is just perfect. I mean, I don't know how anybody could. I won't say anybody. You probably
Yeah,
could.
so
Most people couldn't
it's
create
a
that.
W looking billet.
Yeah, it's about
Connect.
it's maybe
Yeah, so they used 2 billets
yeah, and put
glued
it
together.
Handle. There's like handle added to both sides of that.
Right.
What eventually was shaped to the handle. So it's like a 4-piece bow if you count the handle and the piece in the front, and then
Right.
actually the side, not the front. The face of it or the back of it, which one? The back is it just joins, and then on the back you've got the handle part added.
Right.
And then you got a side shelf added for the shoot off of. But it just, I don't know. I swear I saw an example of that bow listed as a takedown bow, but I've been back through catalogs and I can't find it showing it that way. So maybe it wasn't. It's just the way it's made is just so, to me, unique. That
Yeah,
it makes
I mean, that's a fairly common design. It's like a
yeah,
W. It's like a
right,
W, just like that. Not with these fingers, but with just
yeah, I
these.
got you.
And then it's got slabs glued to the side to make the shelf and the rear part of the handle.
Let me see if I can untie it. I just put this
Well, you
on here.
don't have to. I build them that way. It's a
Yeah, I gotta do that. I gotta look at it though.
you use then you don't have to have a full length stave. You can use 2 short billets.
And like I said, they sold them. They sold billets and staves as something you could, and they advertised it. Build your own bow. They were, among them and Fred himself and just a couple of people were building bows like that anyway.
Right.
It just came unhinged there.
It just did.
And this is that's
Yeah.
the
Yeah. But it's not designed to be a takedown.
I don't.
That is supposed to be glued.
That's what I think now.
Yeah, that's supposed to be like you can get glue from Three Rivers Archery or somebody like that and glue that thing back up.
No, and that's what I intend to do with it. Even if I don't shoot it, I still want to glue it back. But here's a small piece that's added for the shelf.
Yeah.
Well, this is an insert also. It's like a piece of walnut almost looking wood, a dark wood laid in there as either for decoration or just as a.
It's for decoration.
Yeah. And that piece runs all the way up through there. You can see it here. In fact, I'm sure it's walnut because I can see the grain and stuff in here.
I would just get some. I would get some good bow glue and re-glue that, and
that's my intention.
And be happy with it.
And I'm going to glue it back together, and I'll probably glue it, and then I think I'm going to. If I do
what I use a 2-part epoxy.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the name of it right now. Maybe it's made by 3M or somebody like that, and it's good stuff. It's a good bow glue.
I used a powdered glue when I was making the football for the wooden canoe.
Yeah.
And that glue is actually supposed to be pretty good for stuff like that too. And it's actually
that might be good. The football.
Yeah.
I haven't talked about the football, and 30 years.
There's an interesting lady on internet that I watch her videos. She builds rockets and airplanes and things, and her uncle lives on the East Coast, Connecticut or Massachusetts. I'm not sure which. He lives, out in the country kind of, and he's a canoer and he builds cedar strip canoes. So she's gone to his house and actually on video has some videos of her building a cedar strip canoe alongside him up there at his shop. And I look at it and I think they don't make it look hard at all. Why did I not get that finished? I should have finished that. But I was having trouble with the wood, getting the wood long.
We built a football.
Yeah, we built that much of it. She's currently or probably has already finished because I'm way behind. And she was
Which
showing
folks listening out there was the bottom of the canoe.
Yeah.
And then we didn't build the sides.
Yeah, you start in the directions or the instructions or whatever to build the wooden strip canoe recommended once you built the frame, and then you start in the middle basically and build it out till you get a piece that covers a certain amount of area, and it looks somewhat like a football, and they referred to it as the football. So that's what we called it, and it was a big football, yes, and it was a semi-flat. It was concave on one side, but it had a flat profile, and it didn't have a way to inflate it either.
It was going to be cool.
Oh, what's Mark laughing about?
And then I had to go back home, and we didn't finish it.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what happened. We might have finished it if you'd hung around, and we might have figured that out. Because I was having trouble figuring out how to strip the wood not by myself, and like I said, that guy makes it look so easy.
I can still remember cutting strips and fitting strips. Anyway,
long time ago now. But yeah, I think back on that and think, I wish I should have finished that. I wish I'd finished that. But anyway, I didn't. But they sure are pretty when they're done right. Man, oh man. The ones that guy up there builds, he sells them. He builds them and sells them. They're a couple $1,000s each or more.
Yeah.
But man, are they beautiful. And he's building them by hand. They're worth, I'm sure.
They're good for a few years, and then they kind of come apart. But
well, perhaps, yeah, I guess. I don't know. But
we would have destroyed that thing, dude.
Yeah, we would have tried to go fishing in it and stood up or something and hit a rock.
Went over logs, took it over concrete barriers, whatever. We would have destroyed it.
Appreciate this probably. I've seen some canoes lately on sale on like Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
And somebody had a brand new Old Town for sale for a good price. They'd bought it, had it in their basement with the paddles and everything. They never used it, and they were going to sell it. It's probably long gone because the price was good. And you know what? The first thing I thought was, I wonder if you could stand up in that and shoot a bow.
Well, I have an Old Town pack for a 14 foot.
Yeah.
I think it's 14 feet. Old Town pack. And I've gotten wet in it a few times. 16-foot canoes are a little more stable than 14 footers.
Yeah.
But
that 12-footer wasn't stable
but
at all.
If I don't try to stand up and shoot out of it or something silly like that, it's a fine little canoe, and one person can paddle it.
Yeah, I can't. We were doing. I probably told you about my escapade on the Clinch River one day. My boss and a couple of other coworkers who were part of the watershed team back then that did more watershed related products like erosion control and some of that. wanted to take us down and show us a project along the banks of the river, and where they'd fix some stuff from trying to keep it from sloughing off into the river. And that section of the river took a lot of beating because of the release out of the dam sometimes. But they decided it'd be a good way to show that would be all the people in our office would take a canoe trip down the river. And, you know, it's just a few miles. We start it near our office and get out down to the other end. Somebody pick us up, and we were in canoes. And turns out I ended up getting stuck with the regional manager, the big boss, and we got dumped in the river. And of course, a lot of people blame me for that. It really wasn't my fault, but and I didn't even hardly get wet. He did. But one of the things that I stood up in the canoe after checking it to make sure that's not how we got wet. And somebody said, "Oh, you can't stand up in a canoe. That's a canoe. You can't stand up." And I said, "Well, hell, I can. I've been standing up in canoes.
We've been standing up in canoes for 30 years.
And I never had any problem with it. That wasn't the issue. What happened was he turned around and leaned over, and we were in just a little bit of a current. We were waiting on a bunch of other workers to come over this little drop off, and we'd gone across it. I said, here's the deal. He was worried about come to find out he couldn't swim. I didn't know that going in. And I said, just paddle and get up a little bit of speed, and we'll just bump right over that thing. And we did. We came right over, and it was just piece of cake. And I pulled over to the side because he wanted to make sure that everybody got over it okay. It was, I guess he was feeling responsible. He just wanted to make sure nobody got dunked. And so I turned the canoe a little bit, and we were sitting there kind of in the backwater of the dam or eddy. And all of a sudden, the canoe flipped or went like this, and I stepped out of the canoe. And I was just standing there,
And he went and drank.
And he was gone, and I grabbed him by the collar. I reached up there and got him by the collar of his shirt and his life jacket, and he was a big man. Well, he's over 6 feet tall and 200 something pounds. I mean, he was a big man. And I'm sitting there holding him by his collar, trying to pull him out of the water. And that's when I found out he couldn't swim. So, it was a thing. And I still got hired though after that. He still hired me. So I guess he wasn't mad at me too much. But anyway.
Well, remember Dad had that Sears aluminum canoe, that 16-footer.
Now say that again.
Remember Dad had that 16-foot aluminum canoe. It's still sitting at the house. From Sears.
Yeah.
And he had built a bracket on the back of it, and we had that little 2-horse kicker or whatever that he put on it, and we were on Boone Reservoir, and he ran me up into the bank. I mean, we were going to get out, and he ran me up into the bank, and I just stepped out of the canoe, and the whole weight distribution thing shifted, and he just rolled up. The whole canoe just rolled completely over, motor and all.
That extra weight.
And of course, he was like really, joyous and happy about that.
Probably didn't blame you a bit either.
No, he did. He didn't blame me at all.
Oh, Ian, I'm not sure how to take that, buddy. I mean, you think it was one of those you ain't never lived till you've been in a canoe with Tim and up your head, up your neck, and the Clinch River. Maybe that could be that. That could probably be said because that was a pretty unique experience.
We had more misadventures in canoes over the years.
Hey, but they all worked.
When you went around the corner, when you had your wife drop us off and
Yeah.
Brenda dropped us off like 30 miles from the house, and we paddled around the corner, and the river was dry for miles.
We should have known right then to turn around, I guess. Fortunately, Ian, in this case, nobody died either. So you couldn't say you ain't died till you've been in a canoe with them. But
We never lost a man.
no, we never lost any. No, we didn't. And in fact, until that particular day, I'm not sure I'd ever lost anything from a flip or a turnover, or I'm not even sure we ever did.
Binoculars. I know of at least one binocular incident.
Well, that was a different canoe, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know if
you had like an old town pack, like a.
Well, it was a Sears.
It was a 14 or 12 foot canoe.
12-foot Sears fiberglass canoe that I paid like $10 for because Sears had it, and it had some fiberglass damage, which I didn't consider anything. And I asked them if it was for sale, if they sold stuff like that, and they said, yeah, you can have it for. I mean, I paid little or nothing for that thing. I said, heck yeah, I want that. And I took it home and fixed it, did a fiberglass repair on it, and first time I put it in the creek back behind the house because I could carry that thing around. It didn't. I mean, even fiberglass still wasn't very heavy. I put that thing back there in Stewart's Creek and dropped it in, and as soon as I stepped into it or sat down, I was in the water swimming in that big old deep hole back there behind the house.
I was there, dude.
Oh, were you there that day? Okay.
I witnessed the whole event.
And that ruined a
and
good pair.
You had your Cabela's binoculars on, as I
No, I had my Nikons on, I think, a little pair of Nikons.
And
they were not waterproof.
And they were not waterproof.
Yeah, I ruined them. And I sent those. I contacted Nikon, and I said, I've dumped mine in the river. Can I send them back and get them clean? And they were like,
we don't
clean. We don't clean those things. We don't take those apart. And I said, okay. Then I bought the little
I could take you to that spot today. And you were right by the bank, and in that big deep hole, and it just like I don't remember if you stood up or you were sitting down or what, but you just like the canoe just rolled over.
I mean, you talk about like riding a Bronco or something. That was the most unstable canoe I've ever been in. I don't think it was, and it was still kind of tippy with us both in it, as I recall.
And we had a perfectly good, bigger one that was perfectly good.
Perfectly good, which we went back to using after that, I promise you. I sold it pretty quick.
Oh, my.
Well, folks, you've wasted another 3 hours. Perfectly good Saturday morning. But again, I want to emphasize next week it could be a long show also. I'm not good at short shows, you all know that, but it's going to have some really great entertainment. And I hope you can make it, buddy, because the guys that are going to be there, you will appreciate their humor, and you will find humorous things in abundance, I'm sure. And everybody else, I hope you can make it, and I may have some other friends, and not in the chat, or in the chat, not in the studio, whatever you want to call it. And it's gonna be a great visit. I really think it's gonna be epic. I've used that word a lot ever since this came up. I've been working on this for a little while, and then I finally found a way to make it happen, and it's actually only taken me about 3 weeks to put it together. So I'm actually surprised.
And we'll only have 3 panels, right? Because
we'll only have 3 panels because they're going to be together in one room, one desk, one table. I don't know exactly how they're going to set it up, but it's all they've assured me. Dave and his wife have assured me that they got this covered. I forget that they spent all of 2020 and 21 and maybe part of 22 working from home. So he knows all about doing conference calls and meetings and stuff online. So I said, oh, well, you know what? I didn't think about that. So we should be in good shape. So they're going to be ready, and Dave's excited. Quick story. Let me tell you why he's not able to do it tomorrow. I'm sure he'll have more to elaborate, but he got involved in writing a book that he didn't even realize he was doing. He wrote some articles for a museum that's in North Carolina about Southern Appalachian fly fishing. And he wrote several articles about fly tying because he's created a few of his own flies. One being a cicada bug that he's taken and used in several places, and because he's all tore up because next year there's no cicada hatch. But well, actually, that might be great. He's going to be lost track of what I'm saying. There's not going to be a hatch, but that might make them even more useful because there won't be any others around. His might be the only cicada bug on the water. Anyway, they wanted him to write an article, so and he just thought he was writing them for like a magazine maybe or a newsletter. Turns out that they were putting together a book. And and last night I need to call him and ask him how this went. Last night they had the person who was authoring that book or editing it together, and they were gonna, what do you call it when they bring it out to the public? There's a word for that. Anyway, that happened last night. So he had to drive over to where the museum is last night, which was about a 3-hour drive. And he was coming home last night. At least he thought he was. I bet he didn't. And he didn't think he could make it for today, or we wouldn't be doing it today. So it'll be next week, but it'll be a good show. All right, buddy, you take care. You have a good rest of your day. I don't know what you got planned, but have fun. And
I got grandbabies coming. I'm gonna try to catch my filly again.
That'll be good.
Hopefully, I don't get injured today.
Yeah, I hope not. You won't. You got it covered. You figured that
out. She got me a little yesterday. So
anyway, all right, guys. Thanks everybody for being here. Okay, I saw you're talking about a crown. I don't know how that works either. I saw that somewhere. Oh, it's over here in this chat. It says your number 3 crown. I don't know what that is either. I really have no idea what that's about. If you click on it, does do anything, Mark? We'll see. You can take off. I'm just trying to figure this thing out with
all
these
right,
guys.
brother. I'm gonna leave everybody. Thank you.
See you later. Talk to you soon. Oh, just there he goes. Okay. I'm looking at. I've got something that says top fans, and I got a number 1 crown, a number 2, and number 3, but I don't know what creates them. I don't know how they happen. I have no idea. Oh, wait a minute. Here's a question mark. What's the leaderboard? Place for fans to stand out in the community. Top 3 get special badges. Oh. So if you're in the live chat and you're talking a lot, interacting, you get crowns, apparently. How do you get on the leaderboard? You need to collect experience points. I never heard of this. It's all new to me. Or XPs. Here's how you get them. Send live chat messages, send super chats. Well, we're not doing that. Or super stickers. That's where that's come from. We don't do any of that. So, oh, and I can turn that off in the help center. So, if you guys want me to, I'll turn it off. I didn't even know it was there. Didn't know anything about it. So I guess it just depends on how much interaction you have or do in the chat. I think you get 75 points an hour for chatting, and then you can add more. Oh, well, see, Ian knows way more about it than I do. I didn't know any of that. I've never had anything about super chats or stickers or anything. Did my wife leave? I hear a lawnmower. I don't know if I think that's her. Anyway, because I don't even think I don't think I'm allowed to do that. I don't know. Somebody asked me one time why I didn't put up things, say, buy me a cup of coffee, but I don't know how that works either. So I assume if you're not supposed to make money on YouTube, you don't make money on YouTube in any way. So I don't know. I just get on here and talk and have fun, and that's about it. She may be outside mowing. I've got a feeling she is. Pretty sure it's YouTube trying to push super chats. You're probably right, Ian. Well, super chats are not something I see in my future, so no worries. All right, guys, I'm going to cut you loose. Everybody, thanks for coming in. Look, be here next weekend. You're going to like it. I promise you there'll be some never live till you hear this story moments, I think. If there's not, we're really going to be off for a game, because there should be. Yes, she's pulled up on her lawnmower just now in front of the library. I didn't know if it was too hot. I wasn't sure about that. Well, Tina, I know you do, and you usually are right in the middle of it, so I don't know. I didn't turn that on. Honestly, I didn't know anything about that. That's one of the new things they've done, I guess. I have no clue how that works. Anyway, all right, guys. Love y'all. See you next week. I hope. Be here. It'll be a good one. If you don't be here, then look at it on replay, because I promise you it'll be interesting. These are a couple of the best guys in the world, and they both have stories to tell, so it should be good. Anyway, bye-bye, everybody. Bye for now.